Chapter 754. Skeletal Division Leader. When I just arrived at the Azure Flower continent, I could feel that the Scarlet Moon demonic religion's forces are reviving. Zhao Feng's eyes flashed. With his senses as a Void God Realm King, he could sense the slight changes in the aura of the Azure Flower continent, even if he didn't use his divine sense. Whoosh! A transparent scarlet blood-colored token appeared in the Skeletal Division Leader's hand, and it closed its eyes to sense it. Master, in the Western continent alone, I can sense several Scarlet Moon higher-ups. The Skeletal Division Leader was slightly surprised. The Skeletal Division Leader admired Zhao Feng from the bottom of its heart. If it had to choose between the Scarlet Moon religion and Zhao Feng, the Skeletal Division Leader would definitely choose Zhao Feng. Zhao Feng thought for a moment and said, "I'll leave the task of reorganizing the Scarlet Moon demonic religion to you." "Yes, Master." The Skeletal Division Leader bowed as its eyes were filled with shock and excitement. Clearly, Zhao Feng was trying to push him to take control of the Scarlet Moon demonic religion and turn the enemy into his own. Rather than going on a killing spree, it was better to take in the Scarlet Moon demonic religion. In fact, Zhao Feng's main goal in returning to the Azure Flower continent was to find the 6th Warlock Sage to resolve his own problems. As for the Scarlet Moon demonic religion, he was just going to deal with it, so he left it to the Skeletal Division Leader. Furthermore, Zhao Feng wanted to avoid fighting as much as possible in order to reduce the decline of his cultivation. After these days, Zhao Feng had a certain understanding of the characteristics of the cursed words of death. It wasn't just Zhao Feng's cultivation that was declining. His body, soul, and even his lifespan were declining. Of course, Zhao Feng also had the cursed words of death on him, a forbidden area that was difficult to erode. The first was the God's Spiritual Eye. Although the God's Spiritual Eye's eye bloodline power was weakening, it was still able to block out the cursed words of death. The blue eye bloodline lake in the center of the Soul Sea world was connected to the ancient dream realm. The second was the divine tribulation lightning. The cursed words of death couldn't penetrate the purple Soul Sea, where the God tribulation lightning was being absorbed. It could be said, these were the two main taboos on Zhao Feng. Apart from that, even the bloodline of the profound ice-scaled race could not avoid it. If it wasn't for this factor, I could have found another quiet place to cultivate the 5 elemental wind lightning technique and the Golden Kuan sacred lightning body after I returned to the Azure Flower continent. Zhao Feng sighed in his heart. Whoosh, whoosh. The Golden Kuan sacred lightning body and the 5 elemental wind lightning technique appeared in his mind. Zhao Feng's own wind and thunder inheritance had basically been cultivated to the peak. Cultivating the wind lightning inheritance to the Void God realm was the limit. They might be able to barely break through to the mystic light realm, but they wouldn't be able to cultivate any further. As for the Golden Kuan sacred lightning body and the 5 elemental wind lightning technique, they could both be cultivated to the heavenly divine realm after being fused with a few ancient sage cultivation techniques. Cultivation techniques that could allow one to cultivate to the heavenly divine realm were extremely rare in this world. However, these 2 techniques were a complete set, and the 5 elemental wind lightning technique was needed to refine the sacred lightning body. However, the problem was, after cultivating Zhao Feng's wind and lightning inheritance to its current level, it walked a completely different path than the 5 elemental wind lightning technique. In order to cultivate the 5 elemental wind lightning technique, Zhao Feng had to recultivate it. According to the original plan, after Zhao Feng dealt with the danger of death, he would recultivate it. After all, the wind and lightning inheritance had reached the peak, and the other 2 techniques had more potential. At most, it would take 10 years for Zhao Feng to recover his strength. However, Zhao Feng didn't expect the Emperor of Death to have the cursed words of death. The cursed words of death would activate as soon as the user died. It was unavoidable. Right now, the problem that Zhao Feng was worried about was that the cursed words of death would still follow him, even if he recultivated it. Master, I've sensed that the upper echelon of the Scarlet Moon demonic religion is doing something big in the northeast. The Skeletal Division Leader's voice broke Zhao Feng's thoughts. Let's go. Zhao Feng didn't hesitate. After all, this direction led to the northern continent. The skeletal division leader led the way and flew toward a desert in the northeast. A while later, Zhao Feng and the skeletal division leader arrived in the clouds. Below, a fierce battle was unfolding in a gravel mountain range. Zhe, you accomplices of the Sacred Alliance have finally fallen into the Scarlet Moon demonic religion's net. 3 upper echelon members of the Scarlet Moon demonic religion floated in the air. The one in the middle was a sharp-mouthed old man with bat wings on his back. He had a cunning and complacent look on his face. On his left and right was a black-robed sovereign and a white-faced female. They were attacking the experts below. Several hundred elites of the Scarlet Moon demonic religion surrounded them. It's one of the 4 protectors of the Scarlet Moon demonic religion, the Bat-Wing King. The skeletal division leader revealed a weird expression. The black-robed sovereign was one of the former division leaders of the Scarlet Moon demonic religion, and the female was probably new. Below, a black-robed sword sovereign and a middle-aged giant at the half-step origin core realm were locked in a tough battle. The black-robed sword sovereign's attacks were like lightning, and his battle power was close to the peak small origin core realm. Unfortunately, he was the only venerable one below. Mystic Sword Sovereign. Zhao Feng immediately recognized the identity of this sovereign. Zhao Feng had a deep impression of this Mystic Sword Sovereign. The first sovereign Zhao Feng saw in the Canopy Great Country was this Mystic Sword Sovereign. At that time, it was this sovereign who bought the incomplete 7-sword technique. This person was one of the 9 sovereigns in the Sacred True Dragon Gathering. Mystic Sword Sovereign, I, Shi Yuntian, have harmed you. Even if I have to risk my life, I will protect you and fight my way out. The middle-aged giant had a layer of stone skin around him. Although he was only at the half-step origin core realm, his body and bloodline were extremely strong, and his defense could block the attacks of normal sovereigns. Zhao Feng felt that this middle-aged giant was familiar. Father, if we die together. In the rear of the crowd, a young man who was as tall as copper and iron shook the devil cult elites who were besieging him until they vomited blood. Indeed worthy of being one of the overwhelming prodigies of the Sacred True Dragon Gathering. Everyone watch out for his gravity. Several true lord rank experts of the demonic cult were beating up the giant youth. Shi Qingtian. Zhao Feng's eyes locked onto the bronze-skinned young man. Shi Yuntian? Shi Qingtian? Zhao Feng instantly understood that the giant youth was Shi Qingtian's father. Shi Qingtian's cultivation had reached the peak true lord rank, and his battle power was comparable to the half-step origin core realm. It's useless. There are 3 sovereigns, and one of them is one of the 4 protectors, the Bat-Wing Lord. The Mystic Sword Sovereign smiled bitterly. The Bat-Wing Lord's cultivation was not only at the peak small origin core realm. His bloodline was also famous for his speed. No one present could escape from the Bat-Wing Lord. At this point in time, the Bat-Wing Lord only watched from the sky and didn't do anything. Just the elites led by the other 2 sovereigns were able to beat the Mystic Sword Sovereign and the Shi family to the point where they couldn't fight back at all. Which upper echelon is it? The Bat-Wing Lord suddenly sensed something and looked toward the clouds. Shwa! Between the clouds, 2 figures floated down. One was a silver-white skeleton, and the other was an expressionless purple-haired youth. Division Leader Yogu. Division Leader Yogu, didn't you disappear a few years ago? The Bat-Wing Lord and the black-robed sovereign recognized the skeletal division leader. Although the skeletal division leader's appearance had changed, it was still recognized by the upper echelon. Scarlet Moon division leader. Another supremacy has come. Down below, the mysterious sword venerable and the experts of the Shi family felt their hearts skip a beat. Zhao Feng, Shi Qingtian, who was bathed in blood, saw Zhao Feng out of the corner of his eye and almost tripped. It all depended on the situation. Zhao Feng stood shoulder to shoulder with the upper echelon of the demonic religion. They seemed to know each other very well. Zhao Feng, you've joined the Scarlet Moon demonic religion? Shi Qingtian roared. Zhao Feng, the Mystic Sword Sovereign exclaimed. He obviously remembered the shining star from the Sacred Alliance. In his memory, Zhao Feng was the deputy patriarch of the Iron Blood religion, but he hadn't heard any news about him. Why would the former overwhelming prodigy join the Scarlet Moon demonic religion? Zhao Feng, the overwhelming prodigy king of the last sacred true dragon gathering. Zhezhe, skeletal division leader. You actually managed to recruit such an overwhelming prodigy. Those from the Scarlet Moon demonic religion had weird expressions. At this point in time, the battle paused for a short while. Another sovereign from the Scarlet Moon demonic religion had arrived. The Mystic Sword Sovereign, and those from the Shi family fell into despair. Furthermore, the fact that the former overwhelming prodigy had joined the Scarlet Moon demonic religion was a huge blow. Batwing Lord, the skeletal division leader said emotionlessly, I'm here under Master's orders to subdue the Scarlet Moon demonic religion. After speaking, it bowed faintly and looked at the purple-haired youth next to it. What, Master? Subdue the Scarlet Moon demonic religion? Division leader Yogu, did you take the wrong medicine? The Bat Lord and the others were taken aback and berated angrily. The Mystic Sword Sovereign, Shi Qingtian, and company were dazed. What was going on? Had the Scarlet Moon demonic religion started fighting amongst themselves? Of course, this kind of situation was something they were happy to see happen. It gave them a chance to catch their breath. Humph. The skeletal division leader snickered coldly and released a power of the Tao of Bone. Ji, the Bat-Wing Lord, and the other upper echelon felt as if their bones were being crushed by a 1,000,000-kilogram boulder. Wah! The Bat-Wing Lord spat out a mouthful of blood. Plop! Plop! The bones of the other two sovereigns cracked as they fell to the ground. Division leader Yoguyu. The Bat-Wing Lord's face was bright red as he looked at the skeletal division leader in fear. On the battlefield, there was a deathly silence on both sides. The sound of a pin dropping could be heard. This sudden change made everyone not know what to do. An indescribable aura suddenly descended with the skeletal division leader at the center. Both sides were suppressed by the terrifying power of the world. Those below the origin core realm couldn't even move or breathe. Sovereign Lord. The Bat-Wing Monarch's face was filled with shock as he was pressed to the ground by the massive aura of heaven and earth. There are less than 5 sovereign lords in the entire Azure Flower continent. The Mystic Sword Sovereign took in a cold breath. Instinct told him that the skeletal division leader wasn't just a sovereign lord. The Mystic Sword Sovereign had seen sovereign lords before, but their aura wasn't as strong as the skeletal division leaders. Master, what should we do with these people? The skeletal division leader respectfully asked Zhao Feng after suppressing everyone with its strength. Chapter 755. Master. Seeing the skeletal division leader's respectful expression, the Bat-Wing King, the Mystic Sword Sovereign, and company were stunned. Only now did they realize that the expressionless purple-haired youth was the skeletal division leader's master. Zhao Feng, the Mystic Sword Sovereign, Shi Qingtian, and company were speechless. From the moment he appeared until now, Zhao Feng stood next to the skeletal division leader and didn't say anything. His nonchalant appearance made him completely ignored. Until this moment, the skeletal division leader asked respectfully. Everyone's gazes landed on the most dazzling prodigy of the continent. Skeletal division leader, Zhao Feng said unhappily. I've already given you the task of subduing the Scarlet Moon demonic religion. Are you going to ask me for instructions on every little thing? Yes. The skeletal division leader couldn't help but hiccup and curse itself for being dumb. Thinking about what Zhao Feng had experienced in the outside world, the little Qinghua continent, and the Scarlet Moon demonic religion weren't even worth mentioning. It had already felt that Zhao Feng wasn't interested in the Scarlet Moon demonic religion, and threw it to it. As a servant, he had accepted his master's request, so he should do his best to complete these tasks. It's just a trivial matter. The faces of the Mystic Sword Sovereign and company couldn't help but twitch. The Bat-Wing King and company looked at each other with shock. In Zhao Feng's eyes, this battle between the sovereigns of the continent was child's play, and not worth mentioning. None of the sovereigns present could see through Zhao Feng's cultivation. In fact, Zhao Feng even seemed a little sickly. Zhezhe, Bat-Wing King, The three of you only have two choices. Obey me or die. The skeletal division leader laughed and turned its gaze. It had listened to Zhao Feng for a long time, and now it was acting like a division leader again. You dare to betray the patriarch. The white-faced female gritted her teeth and said, Die. The skeletal division leader's eyes were bloodshot. Boom. A dark silver bone hand with a huge bone shadow slammed down from the void, directly crushing the pale-faced woman into a meat patty. The pale-faced woman didn't even have time to scream before she was slapped to death. Hiss. The experts from both sides sucked in a cold breath and shuddered. Too strong. This skeletal division leader is at least at the peak Great Origin Core realm. Apart from the Scarlet Moon Patriarch, probably no one in the Azure Flower continent can deal with it. The Batwing Monarch and the other black-robed sovereign were horrified. If the skeletal division leader's strength was already so monstrous, then what level had its master, Zhao Feng, reached? After weighing the pros and cons, the two upper echelons of the Crimson Moon Empire decided to temporarily yield. As for the rest, most of the elites of the Scarlet Moon religion chose to surrender. However, there were a few Scarlet Moon religion elites who tried to escape from the outer circle. Boom! Boom! The Scarlet Moon elites had only managed to escape half a mile before an invisible will descended from the sky and annihilated their souls. Foe God will. It's at least a half-step King will. This has only appeared on the head. The faces of the Batwing Monarch and company went white. They were originally planning something, but after seeing the skeletal division leader's true cultivation, they couldn't help but feel lucky. A while later, the skeletal division leader took in the elites of the Scarlet Moon religion, including the two sovereigns. In the Azure Flower continent, sovereigns were at the Origin Core realm, and there were very few of them. Those at the True Lord rank were all giants. As for Great Origin Core realm sovereign lords, they could be counted on one hand. This was due to the environment of the Azure Flower continent. Even the nearby two-star sects didn't have many sovereign lords. The skeletal division leader's cultivation could barely enter the ranks of half-step void god realms. Zhao Feng, Shi Qingtian came over with his father, Shi Yuntian, and expressed his gratitude. If it wasn't for Zhao Feng, the Shi family would probably be dead. The Mystic Sword Sovereign and the other experts of the Sacred Alliance had complex and wary expressions. Zhao Feng's goal was to take over the Scarlet Moon demonic religion. If he succeeded, would he become the second patriarch of the Scarlet Moon demonic religion and bring disaster to the continent? Zhao Feng, the entire continent is attacking the Scarlet Moon demonic religion. Aren't you afraid of raising a tiger? Why don't you team up with the Sacred Alliance and destroy the Scarlet Moon demonic religion? The Mystic Sword Sovereign suggested. I've already given the Scarlet Moon demonic religion to my servant. I'm not interested in anything else, Zhao Feng said. The Mystic Sword Sovereign sighed. After the Sacred True Dragon gathering, he couldn't see through Zhao Feng at all. Next, Zhao Feng understood the situation of the Azure Flower continent from the Mystic Sword Sovereign, Shi Qingtian, and company. The current continent, the Scarlet Moon demonic religion, was like a spark that was spreading everywhere. Although the Sacred Alliance and the 10 great sects still had the advantage, they had lost control of the situation. How did the demonic religion recover so quickly? Zhao Feng found a suspicious point. Several hundred years ago, the demonic religion was destroyed, and only a few remnants were left. And this isn't because of the Moon Demon Palace's support. Furthermore, the Scarlet Moon Patriarch himself controls the entrance to the Scarlet Moon inheritance, and can send a few people in every year. The Mystic Sword Sovereign sighed bitterly. Moon Demon Palace. Zhao Feng's eyebrows furrowed. He had interacted with this two-star sect in the Purple Saint Ruins before. After that, Emperor Duanmu had punished the upper echelon of the three sects and made them give up on the Purple Saint Ruins. Looks like I need to go to the Moon Demon Palace when I have time, Zhao Feng murmured. Hearing this, the Mystic Sword Sovereign's eyes bulged. From the looks of it, Zhao Feng had interacted with the Moon Demon Palace before and was planning on going there to find someone. Moon Demon Palace. That was a two-star sect. A two-star sect was in existence that the 10 great sects of the Azure Flower continent could only dream of. Of course, if the mystic sword sovereign knew that Zhao Feng had once robbed a two-star battlefield, he wouldn't be so worried. The Emperor of Death, who had been chased by Zhao Feng before, could easily destroy normal two-star sects, but Zhao Feng wasn't afraid. After that, Zhao Feng and Shi Qingtian chatted for a while. Shi Qingtian was full of respect and gratitude towards Zhao Feng. Zhao Feng mainly asked about the other overwhelming prodigies, especially Yu Tianhao's whereabouts. Thinking about it, 7 years had passed since the promise of 10 years with Yu Tianhao. It had been more than 8 years since the sacred True Dragon gathering in Lu Qinxin had also been separated by more than 8 years. Yu Tianhao doesn't seem to have returned. Shi Qingtian shook his head. Yu Tianhao. It was the mystic sword sovereign who knew a bit. The situation is like this. The Yu clan originated from the legendary continent zone. Over the long years, many branch families were scattered across the limitless ocean. The mystic sword sovereign explained. Continent zone? Zhao Feng couldn't help but be surprised. After the battle 7 years ago, Yu Tianhao left the Azure Flower continent and apparently entered a branch family of the Yu family. That branch family of the Yu family was close to a 2-star power. I heard Yu Xingchen say that Yu Tianhao's bloodline talent is unparalleled and might be sent to the Yu family of the continent zone. The mystic sword sovereign said. Zhao Feng roughly understood what was going on. The Yu family should be like the Duanmu family, a force in the Lord dynasty. Duanmu Qing took Zhao Yufei to the continent zone to revive the Duanmu family. Continent zone? In that case, my battle with Yu Tianhao might have to be postponed. Zhao Feng murmured. The promise they had made back then was that they would meet again in 10 years. 10 years later could be 10, 15, or even 20 years. Zhao Feng promised Zhao Yufei and Duanmu Qing that he would go to the continent zone after dealing with Lu Qinxin. Zhao Feng didn't stay for long in the western continent. Skeletal Division Leader, I'll leave the Scarlet Moon religion to you. Before leaving, Zhao Feng handed the 10,000 Ghost Pearl to the Skeletal Division Leader. The 10,000 Ghost Pearl contained 100 cursed ghost corpses, as well as several Sovereign Lord ghost corpses. Master, don't worry. The measly Scarlet Moon religion is nothing. The Skeletal Division Leader was full of excitement after taking the 10,000 Ghost Pearl. With the Ghost Cursed Array, even if a king came personally, the enemy wouldn't be able to return. Shwa, shwa, shwa. The Skeletal Division Leader waved its hand, and 10 cursed ghost corpses appeared in front of it. Each of them had an aura comparable to the peak small origin core realm. Furthermore, these ghost corpses had the power of curses that could threaten great origin core realm sovereign lords. Seeing the 10 peak small origin core realm ghost corpses, the Bat-Wing King, the Mystic Sword Sovereign and company couldn't help but hiccup. With such strength, the Bat-Wing King and company didn't doubt that the Skeletal Division Leader had the power to rule the continent. Whoosh! A streak of lightning flashed across the sky. Zhao Feng left by himself and headed toward the northern continent. Zhao Feng had truly given the Skeletal Division Leader the responsibility of taking over the Scarlet Moon demonic religion. It only took 4 hours. Zhao Feng flew from the western continent to the northern continent, and this was only because he controlled his true yuan. Northern continent canopy great country. A streak of lightning flashed across the sky. Zhao Feng's divine sense scanned across the capital of the canopy great country and the main headquarters of the Iron Blood religion. There were some familiar faces and some new ones in the main headquarters of the Iron Blood religion. In this period of time, Zhao Feng found some scattered forces of the Scarlet Moon demonic religion, but he was too lazy to bother with them. His target was the 6th Warlock Tower in the country. However, when he arrived near the Thousand Water River, he paused for a moment. The Thousand Water River was where Zhao Feng was once a chapter leader. Surges of powerful auras gathered in a hidden abyss. Even though they purposely hid their auras, they weren't able to escape Zhao Feng's senses. Recently, the Scarlet Moon demonic religion has been expanding near the Thousand Water River. Apparently, some upper echelon members have arrived and are planning something. We've already found where the demonic religion's stronghold is. Let's catch them off guard. Some of the peak experts of the Canopy Great Country were gathered in the abyss. The weakest amongst them were at the true human rank of the true spirit realm. Zhao Feng's divine sense found the thick-eyebrowed scarlet-haired patriarch Hong and the blood-haired Tiama. Their auras were the strongest. Empress Qin, Flooding Lake City Lord, Tian Yunji, Jiang Sanfeng. Zhao Feng also saw many familiar faces. Amongst them, the Iron Blood religion made up half of them. Patriarch Hong and Tiamo, one patriarch and the other patriarch, commanded the 8 forces of the great country. Zhao Feng's divine sense scanned over the stronghold of the Scarlet Moon demonic religion a few thousand miles away, and his expression changed slightly. Thinking up to here, his figure flashed and he entered the hidden abyss. The arrays around the abyss were useless against him. At this point in time, the secret plan of the Iron Blood religion had come to an end. Inside a stone house that was temporarily cut open, this stronghold doesn't seem simple. We should. Under the candlelight, Patriarch Hong and Tiama were still planning something. Right at this moment, a figure appeared between the two. Who's there? Cult leader Hong and Tiama cried out involuntarily. They almost jumped up. Chapter 756. Who's there? Patriarch Hong and Tiama broke out in cold sweat. Who in the Azure Flower continent could appear out of nowhere in front of the two giants without them noticing? Under the candlelight, a purple-haired youth with a sickly appearance appeared between the two. Zhao Feng. Patriarch Hong and Tiama acted as if they had seen a ghost. After 7 years, the unparalleled prodigy who had marched into the outer realms had suddenly appeared in front of the two of them, as if he had come back to life. Patriarch Hong, Deputy Patriarch, how have you been? Zhao Feng winked and smiled. He admitted that he was purposely trying to scare the two. Zhao Feng, you've come at the right time. We're lacking heavyweights. Patriarch Hong and Tiama were overjoyed. The two didn't doubt Zhao Feng's strength at all, just from the fact that he was able to get close to a sovereign without anyone noticing. They could see that Zhao Feng was at least at the origin core realm. Indeed, you've met some trouble. I was preparing to go to the 6th Warlock Tower, but I saw you and the Scarlet Moon demonic religion on the way. Zhao Feng told them the reason. Zhao Feng had left the Scarlet Moon demonic religion to the skeletal division leader. But no matter what, he was the deputy patriarch of the Iron Blood religion and couldn't just ignore it. You've also found that the stronghold isn't normal? Tiamo was surprised. There seems to be 2 or 3 auras of the origin core realm. Zhao Feng wasn't sure. He didn't purposely check when he was flying just now. 3 auras of the origin core realm? Patriarch Hong and Tiama looked at each other and took in a cold breath. Sovereigns at the origin core realm were sovereigns in the Azure Flower continent. Patriarch Hong was the only origin core realm expert in the Canopy Great Country. Deputy Patriarch Tiamo was at the half-step origin core realm, and his battle power was only close to the origin core realm. Hearing this news, Patriarch Hong and Tiama's expressions became solemn. Ask for reinforcements. The same thought appeared in their minds. The enemy had 3 sovereigns, and their stronghold was immeasurable. This kind of power was probably beyond the scope of a big country to deal with. I have to ask the Sacred Alliance, or the 10 Great Sects for help as soon as possible. Cult Master Hong said solemnly. Blood-haired Tiama looked at Zhao Feng with a questioning gaze. He noticed a detail. When Zhao Feng mentioned the 3 venerable ones, he seemed indifferent. Tiama had witnessed Zhao Feng's miraculous rise on the continent. At this moment, his instincts told him that Zhao Feng's strength was immeasurable. There's no need for reinforcements. Since I'm passing by, I'll take care of them along the way and return peace to the country. Zhao Feng shook his head. Deal with it on the way. On the way. Hong Jiaozhu and Tiama could not help but looking at Zhao Feng with a peculiar expression. They thought, what a big tone. Judging from his tone, he seemed to be very casual. Zhao Feng, it's not that I doubt your strength, but you seem to be ill now. Can you really handle 1 or 2 venerables? Hong Jiaozhu said solemnly. 3 origin core realm venerables wasn't a joke. If things went wrong, the Iron Blood religion might be wiped off the continent. Zhao Feng, how can you be so arrogant? Unless you have the battle power of a sovereign lord. Blood-haired Tiamo's eyes lit up. He understood Zhao Feng. And he knew that Zhao Feng was not an arrogant person. Oh, I'm indeed ill. As for sovereign lords, I've killed some in the outside world. It shouldn't be too difficult. Zhao Feng helplessly shrugged with a bitter expression. Killed a high lord before? Hong Jiaozhu and Tiamo's eyes popped out. If it was someone else, they might have thought that Zhao Feng was bluffing. Great. Zhao Feng, we believe you. Hong Jiaozhu and Tiamo made the decision. Immediately after, the two discussed with Zhao Feng about how to attack and when to attack. How about we attack now? I'm in a hurry to go to the 6th Warlock Divine Tower. Zhao Feng suggested. Now. Hong Jiaozhu and Tiamo's faces twitched. It was daytime right now. According to the original plan, the Iron Blood religion would attack at night and catch the Scarlet Moon stronghold off guard. Now. Zhao Feng's tone was very firm. He paused for a moment before continuing. How about I deal with it myself? Hong Jiaozhu and Tiamo looked at each other speechlessly. Zhao Feng really was in a hurry. Fine. Hong Jiaozhu and Tiamo felt helpless. Immediately, Hong Jiaozhu and Tiamo started a meeting and gathered all the peak experts of the Canopy Great Country to discuss. However, a new important figure appeared in this meeting. Zhao Feng. One of the 3 pillars of the Iron Blood religion, Deputy Patriarch Zhao. Him? He is the king of prodigies whose name shakes Azure Flower. There was an uproar in the meeting. Deputy Patriarch Zhao. Some of them were pleasantly surprised, such as Jiang Samfeng and the others. They felt a kind of joy and happiness that they hadn't felt in a long time. However, a small number of people had ugly expressions, such as Empress Qin and the head of the Lu family. Feng the flooding Lake City Lord Lu Jiotian's body shook. He knew that in order to find Lu Qinxin, Zhao Feng had ignored the Iron Blood religion's objections and rejected the chance to join a 2-star sect. In the blink of an eye, more than 7 years had passed. There had been no news of Zhao Feng in the past few years. A true lord-ranked genius entering the limitless ocean was obviously filled with danger. City Lord Lu. Zhao Feng went up and talked to the flooding Lake City Lord. Seeing the flooding Lake City Lord stop, Zhao Feng obviously knew what he wanted to ask. I've found some clues about Qinxin's whereabouts. After we finish off the stronghold of the Scarlet Moon religion, I'll go to the 6th Warlock Divine Tower with City Lord Lu. Zhao Feng explained. Okay. The flooding Lake City Lord was overjoyed. He didn't think that Zhao Feng would find Qinxin's whereabouts in the limitless ocean. The main point of the meeting was to attack the stronghold of the Scarlet Moon religion. Hearing that they were going to attack the stronghold of the Scarlet Moon religion, the crowd broke into chaos. It wasn't hard for them to guess. All of this was caused by Zhao Feng's arrival. Zhao Feng's every action was watched. The peak experts of the great country couldn't see through him at all. However, they guessed that Zhao Feng was most likely at the Origin Core realm, or even the battle power of a sovereign lord. Otherwise, the Iron Blood religion wouldn't have the confidence to attack the stronghold of the Scarlet Moon religion. What they didn't know was that the stronghold of the Scarlet Moon religion had at least 3 Origin Core realms. So they soon came to an agreement. So, the experts in the abyss all flew into the air. Some of them rode flying beasts. 4 hours later, the group of experts from the big country arrived at a bay with complicated terrain. Near a hidden waterfall in the area of the bay. Humph, a mere exalted dares to brazenly attack our secret stronghold? In front of the waterfall, a tall and skinny elder with blood-colored hair and robes stood with his hands behind his back as he looked into the sky. Zha. They definitely wouldn't expect Elder Xueli to come to the Canopy Great Country with 2 other Origin Core realms. We don't have to use baiting anymore. A fatty in golden robes at the half-step Origin Core realm said respectfully. In just a moment, the bloodthirsty auras of the Scarlet Moon demonic religion appeared in front of the waterfall. Apart from that, on the other side of the waterfall was a mysterious elder in a blood-colored moon robe and a beautiful girl in a faint red dress. The beautiful girl could be said to be a peerless beauty. Her pair of snow-white and delicate legs that were tender like jade and her warm red and translucent shoulders were half exposed to the air. Every frown and smile of hers was filled with a type of lethal charm, and she was like a lotus in a valley that bloomed with a mysterious radiance. There was a dark crescent mark on the girl's forehead, and her purple hair blew in the wind, making her seem like a fairy. Even some of the males in front of the waterfall were attracted by the mysterious aura of the girl, and couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. However, facing the mysterious elder and the beautiful girl, everyone's eyes were filled with respect. Even Elder Shueli's tone was very polite to them. So. Right at this moment in time, the sound of flying came from the sky. The experts and elites of the Canopy Great Country, led by the Iron Blood religion, killed their way to the waterfall. Surround them. Kill the remnants of the demonic religion. The experts and elites of the Canopy Great Country had the advantage in numbers, and they instantly surrounded the area. In front of the waterfall, a faint mocking smile appeared at the corner of Elder Shueli's mouth. The mysterious elder and the beautiful girl both had playfulness in their eyes. In this massacre, who was the prey and who was the hunter? Ha ha ha. Patriarch Hong, you're walking into a trap. The Iron Blood religion will be removed from the continent. Elder Shueli roared as his hair blew in the wind. In an instant, the aura of a late-stage small origin core realm dyed the air red. It's Elder Shueli of the Scarlet Moon demonic religion. He's extremely bloodthirsty. The expressions of the upper echelon of the Canopy Great Country changed dramatically. An elder was definitely an upper echelon member of the Scarlet Moon demonic religion. Kill all the elites of the Canopy Great Country. The Scarlet Moon demonic religion will gain a stable footing in the northern continent. A mysterious elder wearing a blood-colored moon robe suddenly appeared in the clouds. See, he slowly raised his hand, and a giant blood-colored moon, with a diameter of 100 yards merged into the air. The light from the blood-colored moon formed a barrier that covered everything within 10 to 20 miles. It was as if the sky had been replaced. The experts of both sides fell into a blood-colored moon in the sky. Could it be a sovereign lord at the Great Origin Core realm? Patriarch Hong and Tiamat both felt uneasy. This was only the two powerhouses. The other three heavens of the true spirit realm felt their true force being restricted by an invisible force. What's going on? My energy and true force are becoming stronger. On the other hand, the members of the Scarlet Moon demonic religion glowed, and their auras and strength rose dramatically. Let the game begin. The mysterious elder in the blood-colored moon robe maintained the giant blood-colored moon in his hand. Right at this moment, enveloped by the light of the blood moon, Elder Shueli, whose combat strength had been amplified, let out a long howl and charged toward Cult Master Hong. Boom! In just the first clash, Patriarch Hong was pushed back, and his blood boiled. Elder Shueli was an expert of the blood demonic Tao, and his battle power increased the most in the blood-colored moon. The hearts of the experts of the Canopy Great Country went cold, and they all felt danger. Empress Qin and company instinctively looked back, and tried to find a way to escape. Not a single one of you can leave. The mysterious girl in a light red dress blocked everyone's path. Origin Core Realm. Such a young Origin Core Realm. Empress Qin and company felt the aura of a sovereign and couldn't help but tremble. The experts from the Canopy Great Country were filled with despair. They didn't expect a mere stronghold to have 3 sovereigns. One of them seemed to be a sovereign lord at the Great Origin Core realm. Zhao Feng, the blood-haired Tiamo exclaimed. The situation was becoming dangerous. However, the purple-haired youth in the crowd stared at the beautiful girl and said, Zhuang Wan. Chapter 757. Zhuang Wan. This beautiful girl was a core disciple of the Moon Demon Palace, and she was on par with Yi Yinyu of the Pure Moon spiritual sect. After so many years, Zhuang Wan had broken through to the Origin Core realm. This time, she had come to the Azure Flower continent with an elder of the sect to reinforce the Scarlet Moon demonic cult. It was a sect mission. Hearing someone call her name, Zhuang Wan paused and looked toward a purple-haired youth in the crowd. After so many years, Zhao Feng's appearance and aura had changed greatly. This was especially so when he looked slightly sick. It's you. A trace of indescribable panic appeared on Zhuang Wen'er's peerlessly beautiful face. That kind of fear, like a conditioned reflex, originated from a scene that was deeply engraved in his memory. In the past, Zhao Feng had comprehended the void space in the Purple Saint ruins and killed everyone like a god of death. Lu Tianyi, Elder Shui Yin, Grandmaster Yin Kong, and company had all died in that nightmarish memory. At this moment, the nightmare in her memory seemed to be right in front of her. The purple-haired youth was looking at her with a smile that didn't seem like a smile. Zhao Feng, why is he here? Zhuang Wen'er's face was pale white and filled with fear. At this moment, she only had one thought left in her mind: run. In the past, Zhao Feng's void space could create a massacre in the Purple Saint ruins. After so many years, she couldn't estimate how much Zhao Feng had improved. Elder Wu, retreat. Zhuang Wen'er quickly sent a message and flew into the air to meet up with the mysterious elder in the Blood Moon robe. What's going on? The Blood Moon elder was stunned. He had never seen Zhuang Wen'er in such panic and fear. This scene caught the attention of Elder Shui Li and company. A prodigy at the Sovereign Lord level was frightened by the name of Zhao Feng. You wanna run? Zhao Feng laughed mockingly and arrived in front of the Blood Moon elder in a single step, blocking Zhuang Wen'er's path. He was just about to find trouble with the Moon Demon Palace. But he didn't expect to meet it so soon. Who are you? The Blood Moon elder's face was grave. Every action of the young man before him carried an invisible will that exerted great pressure on him. He had only felt a similar feeling from the Moon Demon Palace's Grand Elder. Zhao Feng slowly reached out and pressed on Zhuang Wen'er's half-exposed shoulder. Just the aura of his bloodline and physique was enough to seal her true essence and bloodline. Zhuang Wen'er's face alternated between red and white. Her delicate body trembled slightly, and she didn't even have the slightest strength to resist. The young man in his vision overlapped with the nightmare in his memory. Stop! The Blood Moon elder shouted in shock. The mighty aura of a supremacy changed the environment of this area. Below, the great country and Scarlet Moon religion that had just clashed felt an indescribable pressure, making it hard for them to breathe. Supremacy. Cult Master Hong and Elder Shui Li also stopped fighting. Cult Master Hong and Tianma were pleasantly surprised. Zhao Feng had just appeared, and he scared a supremacy out of his wits. With one hand, he controlled a supremacy and caused the Blood Moon elder, who was a supremacy, to pale. At this moment, facing the Blood Moon elder, who was a supremacy, Zhao Feng only snorted coldly. In an instant, an invisible force of heaven and earth enveloped the Blood Moon elder's body. Wah! The Blood Moon elder spat out a mouthful of blood. He felt that all the true essence in his body was sealed, and he couldn't even think. You are actually... The Blood Moon elder's face was filled with shock. The fear on his face was even stronger than Zhuang Wen'er's. There was even more disbelief on his face. What's going on? The elites of Canopy Great Country and Scarlet Moon religion were slightly dumbfounded. Zhao Feng didn't even make a move. He only snorted, and the Blood Moon elder, who was a supremacy, spat out blood. The invisible force of heaven and earth only existed in a small area. Zhao Feng didn't do this because he didn't want to use his soul too much. Instead, he relied more on his intent and soul usage. Although he was hit by the cursed words of death, the intent he comprehended wouldn't disappear or weaken. It was like how the child demigod's intent was extremely high. The negative effects of the cursed words of death were lifespan and life force, followed by true essence, soul, bloodline, and body. The slowest was the Emperor's intent. Intent itself was the condensed intent, and it was built on the foundation of soul power. How is this possible? Zhuang Wen'er was very close, and she could feel the Void God Realm magnificent power from Zhao Feng's body. That brat is strange. Run. Elder Shui Li felt a strong sense of uneasiness. Even an elder of the Moon Demon Palace couldn't fight back against Zhao Feng. Whoosh! He turned into a streak of blood-colored light and flew into the depths of the bay. Zhao Feng glanced in Elder Shui Li's direction. Boom! An intent that seemed to pierce through heaven and earth landed on Elder Shui Li like a bolt of lightning. Arg! Elder Shueli screamed as his soul instantly dissipated, and he fell from the sky. Plop! Elder Shueli's corpse fell into the forest below. This scene caused both sides to tremble, and the Scarlet Moon demonic religion's hairs to stand on end. He killed a sovereign with just one thought. Patriarch Hong, Tiema and company were all dazed. There was probably no one in the entire continent who could do this. Even the patriarch of the Scarlet Moon demonic religion wouldn't be able to do this unless he became a Void God Realm King. Could it be? Patriarch Hong and Tiema looked at each other and had an unimaginable guess. Lord King, we were ignorant. Please forgive us. The elder of the Blood Moon demonic religion said in a trembling voice. Zhuangwaner didn't even dare to breathe loudly. The nightmare in her memory had risen to an unparalleled level. Void God Realm King. This was an existence that stood at the top of the pyramid in the Tsang Ocean. In the Azure Flower continent, Void God Realm Kings only existed in legends. King. Zhao Feng has reached the level of a king. No wonder Patriarch Zhao was able to kill an elder of the Scarlet Moon demonic religion with just one thought. The Canopy Great Country was in an uproar. Cult leader Hong and Tiema looked at each other. Both of their eyes were filled with astonishment, as well as ecstasy. One had to know that there wasn't a single Void God Realm King in the entire Azure Flower continent. However, the Iron Blood religion had given birth to a Void God Realm King. What kind of honor was this? Patriarch Hong and Tiema couldn't help but feel lucky that they had put Zhao Feng in such an important position. The birth of a king was enough to change the situation of the continent, and it wasn't something that could be stopped. King. Empress Qin was dazed as if she were in a dream. The elite instructors of the Scarlet Moon demonic religion fell into despair. Under the gaze of a king, they didn't even have the courage to run. Elder Shueli was a living example. Lord King, what do you want? You can tell me your conditions. The Elder Blood Moon said bitterly. At this moment in time, Zhao Feng had already retracted his Void God Realm magnificent power. However, even then, the Elder Blood Moon and Zhuangwaner didn't dare to have any thoughts. Zhuangwaner, stay behind. Go back to the Moon Demon Palace and tell them that if they don't give me an explanation within 100 days, I will kill her and remove the Moon Demon Palace from the Tsang Ocean. Zhao Feng slowly said. Hearing this, the Elder Blood Moon's heart shook. This was especially so when the Moon Demon Palace's name was removed from the ash-gray sea. Facing Zhao Feng's cold and decisive voice, the Elder Blood Moon felt that it was absurd. He didn't dare to doubt that Zhao Feng had the ability to do so. In reality, with Zhao Feng's strength, it wouldn't be hard for him to destroy the Moon Demon Palace, even if he fell below the Void God Realm. This was because his intent wouldn't disappear, and the weakening of Emperor intent would be slower. Furthermore, Zhao Feng estimated that it would take at least 1 or 2 months for it to fall below the Void God Realm. After all, there was a huge gap between the Void God Realm and the Origin Core Realm. I'll go right now. I hope that Lord King won't harm Waner. The Elder Blood Moon took a deep breath. He knew that he had no bargaining power in front of a Void God Realm King. Whoosh! The Elder turned into a streak of blood-colored light and flew toward the limitless ocean. Zhuangwaner's face was pale white, and she felt helpless. She couldn't predict what kind of future awaited her. However, she knew that her life would fall into the game between Void God Realm Kings. Next, the elites of the Scarlet Moon demonic religion either died or surrendered. A battle that could have been earth-shattering was stopped with a thought from a king. Zhao Feng wasn't interested in dealing with the aftermath. My strength has dropped. Zhao Feng couldn't help but sigh. Although he still had the battle power of an emperor, his soul, true yuan, and bloodline had all weakened. Hearing that, the faces of Patriarch Hong, Tiema, and company couldn't help but twitch. Zhuangwaner was even more bitter and speechless, too ashamed to show her face. As it turned out, Zhao Feng wasn't even at his peak state. Zhao Feng couldn't be bothered to explain. The weakening of his strength made him understand the purpose of this trip to the Azure Flower continent. Immediately, Zhao Feng bid farewell to Patriarch Hong and Tiema. City Lord Lu. Zhao Feng's gaze landed on the flooding lake City Lord as he took him, and Zhuangwaner in the direction of the 6 Warlock Divine Tower. Along the way, Zhuangwaner acted as the coolie. She summoned her flying spirit pet to carry them. The flooding Lake City Lord looked at Zhao Feng with a complicated gaze. He never would have thought that the azure-haired brat that he had forced to marry back then had already become a legendary king. This made him feel even more hopeful about Lu Qinxin's whereabouts. Several hours later, in the depths of the mountain, a pitch-black hexagonal tower appeared. When Zhao Feng arrived, on the 49th floor of the 6th Warlock Divine Tower, stood an elder that was as silent as the night. Meow. A silver-black lazy cat appeared on the edge of the tower and looked at a black dot that was becoming bigger and bigger. The guest is here. The sage slowly spoke, as if he had been waiting here for a long time. So, at the same time, a flying spiritual pet landed below the 6th Warlock Divine Tower. You stay here. Zhao Feng ordered and told Zhuangwaner to wait below. Zhuangwaner felt humiliated. She was a genius at the Origin Core realm, but she was like a driver or a guard. In reality, Zhao Feng just didn't want Zhuangwaner to know some secrets about him. Sir, please. A female priest of the 6th Warlock Divine Tower respectfully invited Zhao Feng up. Meow meow. Meow meow. On the 49th floor of the tower, the little thieving cat and the lazy cat harumphed coldly. The sage's turbid eyes flashed when they landed on Zhao Feng, and for the first time, a hint of shock appeared in them. Cursed of death. The sage's voice was slightly hoarse as he said word by word. Chapter 758. Zhao Feng's eyes suddenly lit up. Ever since the pursuit of death, this was the first person who could see the cursed words of death on him. Moreover, he recognized her at first glance. Zhao Feng couldn't help but feel a little hopeful. He really didn't find the wrong person. Clearly, the sage had a certain understanding of the cursed words of death. However, the sage's expression turned grave when he read the words cursed words of death. Wise man, you seem to know a little about the cursed words of death? Zhao Feng could not help but ask. The sage pondered for a moment, as if he was thinking about something. After a long while, his murky eyes looked toward the sky. The cursed words of death originates from the ancient witch race, which is ranked second among the 10,000 ancient races. The price of using this forbidden technique is death. The stronger the host, the stronger the power. In the immemorial era, the ancient witch race used the language of death. Even the immemorial gods and legendary races of the 10,000 races couldn't survive. When Zhao Feng heard this, he was shocked. This cursed words of death was much more terrifying than he had imagined. Even the ancient gods and the legendary races of the 10,000 races couldn't escape. No wonder his profound ice-scaled race bloodline and body were slowly deteriorating and couldn't be stopped. In the current fan universe, the ancient shaman race is basically extinct. However, in the future, there are still some people who have studied the secret arts of the soul path to the extreme and can use this art. Perhaps their power is far from the ancient shaman races, but it is not to be underestimated. At this point, the 6th Warlock Sage curiously looked at Zhao Feng. That person is the Emperor of Death. Zhao Feng said seriously, it really is the Emperor of Death. His mastery of the Soul Tao has reached the peak of the Ash Ocean. More importantly, the Eye of Death is a soul-type bloodline inheritance of the 8 great god eyes. It is a powerful medium for the cursed words of death. The sage heaved a sigh. Zhao Feng couldn't help but admit that the Emperor of Death's mastery in the Tao of the Soul was more than a level higher than his. It was a pity. He met Zhao Feng's god's spiritual eye, a god eye level bloodline, and was completely countered. Otherwise, none of the martial monarchs in the Zhongxi could defeat the Death Emperor, let alone chase him to such a miserable state. Even a sacred lord didn't want to provoke the Emperor of Death. In that case, may I ask the wise one if there is any way to dispel the cursed words of death? Zhao Feng's heart tightened. There are some methods, but most of them are extremely harsh. The sage hesitated for a moment. Zhao Feng couldn't help but listen attentively. He did not expect the sage to be able to resolve his cursed words of death when he sought him out. However, the sage of the 6th Warlock was known to be knowledgeable and far-sighted. He had many inheritances of the path of fate, the path of music, the path of charm, and many others. Zhao Feng was only hoping that the sixth warlock divine sage would be able to give him some inspiration and methods. The first method is to find the eyes of samsara. These god-eye bloodlines can counter the cursed words of death to a certain degree. Eyes of samsara, one of the 8 great god-eye inheritances. Zhao Feng was overjoyed. At the very least, there was something in this world that could counter the cursed words of death. However, only the inheritors of the Eyes of Death and the Eyes of Destiny had appeared in the Zhangxi. The Eyes of Samsara had never appeared before. It was said that the Eyes of Samsara were the rarest of the 8 great god-eye inheritances. The second method is that everything in the world is balanced. If there is a cursed words of death, then there is also a blessing of death. The 6th warlock divine sage gave a faint smile. Blessing of death? Zhao Feng was instantly stunned, and he said with joy, "The blessing of death and the cursed words of death are like fire and water, life and death." That's right. The 6th warlock divine sage nodded. The blessing of death was the most direct method to dissolve the cursed words of death. However, the principle behind the blessing of death is the same as the cursed words of death. They are both witchcraft of death. The words of death are naturally activated after death. The 6th warlock divine sage shook his head. Zhao Feng understood, but he shook his head bitterly. Using the blessing of death required the user's death as the foundation. It was for this reason that the words of death were so heaven-defying. In other words, the user had to be as skilled in the soul as the Emperor of Death, or even stronger, and the host had to be no weaker than an Emperor or the Eye of Death. Only by using death as the foundation could the blessing of death be used to dissolve the Zhao clan's curse on Zhao Feng's body. This condition was extremely harsh. It would be hard to find a single person in the entire Zhangxi that fulfilled this condition. Even if there was such a person, who would be willing to sacrifice themselves to use the blessing of death. The third method is the cicada shedding technique. This is the method that this old man has thought of. It might work against you. The 6th warlock divine sage inspected Zhao Feng. Oh, hope reignited in Zhao Feng's eyes. The cicada shedding technique requires a forbidden part of your body that can be isolated from the cursed words of death. The 6th warlock divine sage explained. A forbidden part? Zhao Feng suddenly understood the principle behind the cicada shedding technique. He did have a forbidden part on his body. His god's spiritual eye wasn't affected by the curse of death. Only his soul and eye bloodline power had weakened. The god's spiritual eye's blue lake in the center was a forbidden part of the ancient dream realm. Apart from that, the part of Zhao Feng's soul that absorbed God tribulation lightning could also block out the cursed words of death. Let your forbidden part be reborn, while the rest of your body dies under the words of death. This is the cicada shedding technique. Very few people can use this method. I believe that with the 9th god's eye, you can try it. The 6th warlock divine sage smiled and said, these were the 6th warlock divine sage's 3 methods. The first 2 required external help, while the third method could be tried by Zhao Feng himself. The third method can be used as a reference by the Emperor of Death, and use the Eye of Death to recultivate. But this method is too dangerous, and it will give up one's body, bloodline and cultivation. Zhao Feng sighed. The most ideal method was the second one, the blessing of the words of death. This method was more targeted and the most thorough, but correspondingly, the conditions required for this method were also the harshest. But no matter what, Zhao Feng now had a clear idea of how to resolve the cursed words of death, and he was no longer clueless. Thank you for your advice. Zhao Feng was grateful. Anyone else would find it very difficult to resolve the cursed words of death so comprehensive. Little friend is too serious. The 6th warlock divine sage bitterly shook his head. You are the 9th god's eye's limitless potential. If it weren't for you, Qinxin would have died before she was 16. Qinxin, Zhao Feng and the Flooding Lake City Lord understood the other goal of this trip to the 6th warlock divine tower. Immediately, Zhao Feng told the 6th warlock divine sage about what happened in the Fanluan ancient sound palace. If this old man's speculations are correct, Qinxin has been reborn for 8 years. The 6th warlock divine sage revealed a gratified expression. Hearing this, Zhao Feng faintly understood what this rebirth was about. You have probably seen people who use this method of rebirth before. But that person was unable to experience the glory of the Fanluan ancient sound and change fate like Qinshin. The 6 Warlock Divine Sage's tone was slightly mysterious. He had met that person before, but Zhao Feng couldn't remember. Wise one, are you able to tell me exactly where Qinshin is? The Flooding Lake City Lord couldn't help but ask. Zhao Feng also wanted to know where Qinshin was. Zhao Feng, if you are still fated, you will see Qinshin again. If you want to know where she is, you will need to find the Eye of Samsara. The 6 Warlock Divine Sage's eyes were filled with a smile. Zhao Feng felt like the 6 Warlock Divine Sage knew more, but wasn't willing to tell him. Another Eye of Samsara? Zhao Feng couldn't help but be speechless when he thought about this inheritance of one of the 8 great god eyes. The Eyes of Samsara once appeared in the continent zone 10,000 years ago, but it was only for a brief moment, and the dragon's head was never seen. The 6 Warlock Divine Sage said, "The continent zone?" Zhao Feng murmured. He knew that this was a place he had to go. On the 6 Warlock Divine Tower, Zhao Feng was dazed for a moment, but he didn't disturb the 6 Warlock Divine Sage and left. He felt that the 6 Warlock Divine Sage was filled with many mysteries that he still couldn't see through. On the 49th floor of the tower, the 6 Warlock Divine Sage sent off Zhao Feng with his eyes. Meow. The big lazy cat gave a long and lazy cry. Little Qinghua continent has such a large source of providence, but this isn't the center of fate. The 6 Warlock Divine Sage murmured. On the same day, the 6 Warlock Divine Tower disbanded and left with the big lazy cat. From then on, the 6 Warlock Divine Sage became a legend in the Azure Flower continent, and he never came back. However, his mysterious aura left a mark in the history of the Azure Flower continent. Coincidentally, half a month after the 6 Warlock Divine Sage left, an elder of the Scarlet Moon demonic religion led a large group of elites toward the 6 Warlock Divine Tower. But they missed. As expected of the 6 Warlock Divine Sage, I was ordered by Patriarch Feng to capture him alive, but the Scarlet Moon Elder stood on the 6 Warlock Divine Tower for a long time before leaving. But then, this group of Scarlet Moon elites was only several hundred miles away. Whoosh! A bright orange light came from the direction of the limitless ocean, and the powerful aura it radiated made everyone feel suffocated. The newcomer was a black-haired youth with eyes as deep as the dark sky. His every action was filled with a will that looked down on the world, giving others a sense of pressure. Who's there? The Scarlet Moon Elder met the black-haired youth as soon as he flew a certain distance away. This person looks familiar. It's him, Yu Tianhao, one of the overwhelming prodigies from the last sacred true dragon gathering. A few of the Red Moon elites let out a low cry. Remnant of the Scarlet Moon demonic religion? Then let's take care of him on the way. Yu Tianhao smiled faintly and slowly raised his palm. A brilliant orange light, like the blazing sun of the Golden Crow, instantly engulfed everything within a few miles. Arg! Dozens of elites, including the Red Moon Elder, were instantly burned and melted in the orange light, turning into ashes. In just one move, he had killed a sovereign and many experts of the Scarlet Moon demonic religion. Zhao Feng, I seem to feel your aura. Yu Tianhao stood still as his black hair blew in the wind. His battle intent came from the unparalleled heaven-battling bloodline. He looked in a certain direction. If he followed that direction, he would reach a remote area of the northern continent, the Cloud area. At this moment in time, Zhao Feng was already in the 13 countries. Chapter 759. Cloud 13 Nations. Cloud Nation. Sky Moon Mountain. On a green peak, Zhao Feng looked down at the Broken Moon clan. The orderly scene allowed him to enjoy a brief moment of peace and tranquility. After so many years, there were still many familiar faces in the clan. Many of these familiar faces were the bottom disciples of the clan, but now, many of them had reached the middle and upper echelons of the clan. Zhao Feng saw Lin Fan, the former top outer disciple, who was now a vice head of the inner clan, with a cultivation of half-step true spirit realm. In his memories, That young and inexperienced girl, Ran Xiaoyuan, had now become a dignified and elegant female elder of the sect. In the past, Yang Qingshan and Nan Gongfan, who were both disciples of Lord Guanjuan, had become deacons. The current Broken Moon clan's strength was comparable to a half-star clan. Within the clan, there were more than 20 elders or division heads at the True Spirit realm. In a corner of the Broken Moon clan, a man dressed in black was drunk, but no one in the 13 countries dared to underestimate him. He was the True Lord rank expert of the Broken Moon clan, True Lord Taishao. The other True Lord rank in the Broken Moon clan was Lin Tong, who had the heavenly absent eye. These two True Lord ranks had either been enslaved by Zhao Feng, or had betrayed him by signing a blood contract. In reality, when Zhao Feng returned to the Azure Flower continent, Lin Tong and True Lord Taishao both felt something. The former came from the Dark Heart Seed, and the latter from the blood contract. Brother Zhao. The voice of a male sounded from the side. The person who had come was Yang Gan, the current clan master of the Broken Moon clan. Brother Yang. Zhao Feng smiled faintly. Yang Gan and him were both disciples of the first elder of the Broken Moon clan, and their relationship back then could be considered to be good. Junior brother Zhao, now that you've returned, you seem somewhat different from before. Yang Gan said with a weird tone. In Yang Gan's eyes, Zhao Feng was a cultivation maniac, and last time he came back, he was always in a hurry. But this time, Zhao Feng had been back for more than 10 days, and most of the time, he was very relaxed. Ever since I came back, Zhao Feng didn't cultivate. Instead, he wandered around. Coupled with his sickly appearance, he looked like a terminally ill person who had returned to his hometown to recuperate. Zhao Feng smiled and did not explain anything. Subsequently, Zhao Feng and Yang Gan walked around the Broken Moon clan for a while. Greetings, sect master. Along the way, some sect members and disciples bowed respectfully. Some of the new disciples didn't know who Zhao Feng was, so they looked at him curiously. Those old people, who knew Zhao Feng, all looked at him with awe and respect. Their respect for him was even above that of the sect master. On the way, Zhao Feng played chess with Elder Zhang and Elder Guan, the two vice hall masters who used to be his teachers and friends. During the conversation, the two old men still felt it was a pity that Zhao Feng did not enter the Tao of Alchemy or Array Refining. 10 in the evening, Zhao Feng and Yang Gan arrived at First Elder's palace. The Great Elder's missing arm was replaced by a silver-green metal arm. This was the Wheel of Light and Darkness that Zhao Feng had forged for his master last time. Now, First Elder's cultivation was half a step away from the True Lord rank, and with this Wheel of Light and Darkness, he could even fight against True Lord ranks. Zhao Feng did not think of any way to increase the cultivation of his friends and family upon his return. The path of cultivation was dangerous, and not everyone could kill their way into the outside world. Sometimes being a frog at the bottom of a well was a blessing. Of course, when Zhao Feng returned this time, he brought a gift for his two masters and his parents, the Immortal Springs wine. The Immortal Springs wine could increase one's lifespan by 1,000 years and change one's body. With the help of the Immortal Springs wine, First Elder and Company's state of existence would be comparable to or even surpass the Origin Core realm. Feng the Scarlet Moon demonic religion has swept across the continent, but the cloud area hasn't been affected much. But the continent is suffering. If it's possible, you should do your part. First Elder said. This time, Zhao Feng's level had exceeded his imagination. This could be seen from the Immortal Springs wine that he had given him. Master, don't worry. I've already sent a servant to subdue the Scarlet Moon demonic religion. Zhao Feng took a sip of the peak-grade spiritual wine he had brought from the outside world. Meow meow. The little thieving cat next to him also hugged the wine jug with a drunken expression. First Elder and Yang Gan exchanged glances with each other. They were both shocked and confused. Was Zhao Feng really so arrogant to think that he could subdue the Scarlet Moon demonic religion with just a servant? However, they knew that Zhao Feng wasn't arrogant. Maybe the Scarlet Moon demonic religion didn't have the right for Zhao Feng to take action. The second day, Zhao Feng left the Broken Moon clan and met with the elders of the Dragon Killing Alliance. Although the cloud area was far away, its overall strength wasn't to be underestimated. Among them, the dragon-killing alliance controlled the territories of two former strong countries, and their headquarters were stationed in the Cloud Country. From Elder Su, Zhao Feng understood the Scarlet Moon demonic religion's influence on the Cloud area. Overall, the Cloud area lacked resources and was far away. It wasn't the focus of the Scarlet Moon demonic religion anymore. The Skeletal Division leader's forces in the Cloud area had been uprooted by Zhao Feng, so the Cloud area was relatively peaceful. Occasionally, some remnants of the Scarlet Moon demonic religion would escape to the Cloud area and be killed by the dragon-killing alliance. Several days later, Zhao Feng went to spend time with his parents and Lord Guanjuan. Everyone that knew Zhao Feng felt weird. When did the cultivation maniac become so relaxed? I'll spend the rest of my time with Master, my parents, my brothers, and my friends. In the dead of night, Zhao Feng looked at the stars. After the matters in the Azure Flower continent were finished, Zhao Feng would head to the continent zone. From now on, everything in the Azure Flower continent would become further and further away from Zhao Feng. Before this, Zhao Feng was enjoying the peace that he hadn't had in a long time as he accompanied his friends and teachers. In the blink of an eye, Zhao Feng stayed in the Cloud area for a month or two. In this month or two, Zhao Feng's footprints were all over the Cloud area, but he still focused on the places that had left a deep impression on him. During this period, Zhao Feng had stayed in Sunfeather City and Greenleaf Village for a few days. Zhao Feng had even used a special method to enter the Floating Crest Palace. Floating Crest Palace. An inheritance of this level wasn't enough to enter Zhao Feng's eyes. Under the little thieving cat's request, Zhao Feng once again entered the depths of the Floating Crest Palace, where he had obtained the Yin Shadow Cloak and the little thieving cat's egg. Up until now, there were still a few treasures in the treasury that were good for sovereigns. Zhao Feng analyzed that the original owner of the Floating Crest Palace was at least a half-step king. It looks like the little thieving cat's egg was just a coincidence. Zhao Feng murmured. The original owner of the Floating Crest Palace loved to collect, and some items that couldn't be identified, or were made of special materials, were also put into the treasury. There were also some decent treasures in the treasury, as well as other areas of the Floating Crest Palace. However, Zhao Feng didn't touch them, and left them for later generations. Not only did he not take anything, he even added some inheritances, or treasures into the Floating Crest Palace. Some of the spoils of war from the sovereigns and kings were useless to Zhao Feng, so he left them in the Floating Crest Palace. On this day, Zhao Feng was lying on a hill in the Broken Moon clan, when he suddenly sensed something. Zhao Feng felt the auras of several kings descend upon the Azure Flower continent, but they soon faded away. They're finally here? Zhao Feng smiled lightly as his relaxed expression disappeared. Shua. Zhao Feng's figure flashed and disappeared from the Broken Moon clan. A while later, Zhao Feng found a sexy girl in a red dress somewhere in the Cloud Country. It was Zhuangwan. Zhao Feng, the Grand Elder of the Moon Demon Palace, has come to the Azure Flower continent. The Grand Elder says he wants to talk to you. Zhuangwan held a message token in her hand and said carefully, "Talk. Does the Moon Demon Palace have 3 kings?" Zhao Feng smiled. Zhuangwan was speechless. The Moon Demon Palace only had one Void God Realm king. If they really wanted to talk, the Moon Demon Palace wouldn't invite Void God Realm kings from other forces. Zhuangwan glanced at Zhao Feng and found that the latter was still relaxed and calm. The Grand Elder is currently in the Sacred Alliance. Zhuangwan added. Okay. Zhao Feng said goodbye to his friends in the Cloud area without hesitation, and left the Cloud area with Zhuangwan. When they passed by the Canopy Great Country, Zhao Feng found that the situation in the Azure Flower continent had changed. The Skeletal Division leader had subdued many elites of the Scarlet Moon demonic religion, and killed anyone who didn't obey. Through the Dark Heart Seed, Zhao Feng knew that the Skeletal Division leader had subdued the forces of the Scarlet Moon demonic religion in the western and southern continents, and was fighting with the Scarlet Moon demonic religion in the middle continent. In front of the cursed ghost corpses, all obstacles were useless. The skeletal division leader only used a dozen or so cursed ghost corpses to dominate the Azure Flower continent. At the same time, under the attacks of the Sacred Alliance, the Scarlet Moon demonic religion was losing ground. Apart from the Scarlet Moon Patriarch, the Scarlet Moon demonic religion was basically destroyed. On this day, Zhao Feng entered the Middle Continent and arrived at the Sacred Alliance. From far away, Zhao Feng could feel powerful auras. The strongest were the three king auras, and the rest were the origin core realm experts of the Sacred Alliance and the 10 great clans. Within a grand hall of the Sacred Alliance, reporting to Grand Elder, Zhao Feng and Zhuang Wan'er have arrived. The Blood Moon Elder from the Moon Demon Palace held a message token in his hand and bowed. At the center of the hall wasn't the Palace Master or the core members of the Sacred Alliance, but three magnificent power. On the left was a golden skeleton with a deathly aura, and on the right was a demonic Tao King surrounded by black air. In the middle was a female dressed in moon robes. A pure and dignified woman in a moon robe appeared. She was like a goddess of the stars and moon, and her aura suppressed the other two kings. The existence of these three magnificent powers caused the entire Sacred Alliance to become deathly silent. The Heaven-Earth Yuan Qi seemed to freeze in this area. Below them were the upper echelons of the Sacred Alliance, including the Bronze Skin Giant, Sovereign Yu Xingqian, Dao Sovereign White Cloud and company. However, these supreme experts of the continent didn't even dare to breathe loudly at this moment. They were filled with fear and trepidation. These three Void God Realm Kings were originally from the neighboring Tianlu Island zone, but they had suddenly arrived at the Sacred Alliance. What did that Zhao Feng do to make these three kings descend? The upper echelons of the Sacred Alliance were uneasy. Behind Sovereign Yu Xingqian stood a black-haired youth with eyes as deep as the stars. Under the pressure of the magnificent power, Yu Tianhao had a slightly angry expression, but he was stopped by his father. Don't be rash. One wrong thought from these three kings can affect the survival of the Azure Flower continent. Chapter 760. Under the radiance of the three monarchs, the entire hall fell into a deathly silence and pressure. The upper echelon of the Sacred Alliance were all sovereigns of the Azure Flower continent. All of them were at the origin core realm, and many of them came from the 10 great clans. However, at this moment, no one dared to breathe loudly. Three Void God Realm Kings had come from the little Azure Flower continent, and they all represented a 2-star sect. All of this was because Zhao Feng had kidnapped a peerless genius of the Moon Demon Palace. The latter had a blood relationship with the Grand Elder of the Moon Demon Palace. The three kings sat at the top of the hall, and it was impossible to see their expressions. They only waited silently and didn't purposely release any aura. But the atmosphere in the hall became heavy. Half the time it took to make tea later. The sound of flying came from the sky. A couple breaths later, a male and female landed in front of the hall. One was a purple-haired youth, and the other was a beautiful girl. Zhao Feng, the upper echelon of the Sacred Alliance exclaimed. A man and a woman walked into the hall unhurriedly. Zhao Feng had a casual expression, as if he was taking a stroll. But Zhuang Wan'er was slightly uneasy. However, when Zhuang Wan'er saw the three kings, she let out a breath. However, she still didn't dare to act rashly. Zhuang Wan'er knew that Zhao Feng had already sensed the auras of the three kings, but he still calmly came. She wouldn't believe that Zhao Feng didn't have anything to rely on. Zhao Feng, we finally meet. A gentle female voice that sounded like the sounds of nature came from the person in the middle of the three kings. It was a pure and holy female in moon robes. Her every action gave off the feeling of a goddess. Saint Moon Ant Goddess. Zhao Feng looked at the moon-robed female and said calmly. The female in front of him reminded him of Yi Yinyu in the Purple Saint ruins. Yi Yinyu was the disciple of the Saint Moon Ant Goddess. Back then, when Yi Yinyu used the Void God protection, Zhao Feng had seen the outline of the Saint Moon Ant Goddess. In the main hall, the conversation between Zhao Feng and the Saint Moon Ant Goddess caused a ripple in the crowd. Their gazes met for a brief moment in midair. Zhao Feng's eyes were sharp and seemed to have the power to pierce through one's soul. The Saint Moon Ant Goddess's beautiful eyes were gentle and calm. This was out of the Sacred Alliance's expectation. When the three kings saw Zhao Feng, they didn't immediately question him or punish him. The meeting between the two was much more gentle than he had imagined, as if they were old friends who had not seen each other for many years. Zhuang Wen'er was even standing behind Zhao Feng. This kind of atmosphere was very strange. The upper echelons of the Sacred Alliance exchanged glances with each other, vaguely having their own guesses. It wasn't hard to see that the three kings were somewhat wary of Zhao Feng. Could it be that the rumors were true, and that Zhao Feng had already become a Void God Realm King? However, even so, facing three veteran foe God Realm Kings with powerful two-star sects behind them, Zhao Feng should be the weaker side. Zhao Feng, the expression of the demonic Dao King on the side was grim. I heard that you threatened our core disciple, and even threatened to destroy the Moon Demon Palace. Instantly, the hall, which had just calmed down, became tense. The demonic Dao King was wearing a set of black armor, and there was a scarlet black moon mark on his forehead. A magnificent power of the demonic Dao covered the hall. The hearts of the upper echelons of the Sacred Alliance jumped. That's right, I said that. This time, I hope that you can give us an explanation for taking the Azure Flower Continent. Zhao Feng stood with his hands behind his back as he slowly walked forward. Brat, don't think that the Moon Demon Palace is wary of you just because you've become a king. The demonic Dao King roared. Zhezhe, what big words. The Black Cliff Palace's golden skeleton king laughed weirdly. Only the Saint Moon Ant Goddess in the middle had a calm expression. She raised her hand slightly, stopping the other two kings from attacking in anger. Zhao Feng's face was still calm, but there was a hint of coldness in his eyes. Zhao Feng, the Saint Moon Ant Goddess said, we know that you're the disciple of Emperor Duanmu. But according to what I know, Duanmu Qing left the Tsang Ocean long ago. As soon as these words were spoken, a commotion arose in the crowd once more. The upper echelons of the Sacred Alliance were shocked. They hadn't thought that Zhao Feng was the disciple of an emperor. Could it be that you, a newly ascended king, wants to become enemies with three two-star sects? Even if you're not afraid, the Azure Flower Continent is innocent. The Saint Moon Ant Goddess had a faint smile on her face. But the power in her words made Zhao Feng's heart tremble for the first time. Of the three kings, the Saint Moon Ant Goddess was the hardest to deal with. Her cultivation had reached the peak of the king level, and the Pure Moon Spiritual Sect was a 2.5-star sect. They definitely had more than one king. Are you threatening me? It looks like the lesson that Master gave you wasn't enough. Zhao Feng's expression turned cold. The expressions of the three kings changed. They hadn't thought that Zhao Feng would be so domineering. But Emperor Duanmu had indeed taught them a lesson. Zhao Feng, don't refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit. Hand over Zhuang Wen'er, and we won't harm anyone here. The Demonic Path King said in a deep voice. The three kings stared at Zhao Feng. The upper echelons of the Sacred Alliance in the hall were overjoyed and surprised. The three kings had come to negotiate with Zhao Feng. If Zhuang Wen'er could be traded for the safety of so many people, it was definitely worth it. Are you still threatening me? Zhao Feng's expression darkened, and his purple hair rose without any wind. A formless chill spread throughout the hall. Even the three kings felt an indescribable unease. The kings exchanged glances with each other, and their expressions were solemn. Firstly, Emperor Duanmu's power was still fresh in their minds. Secondly, the three kings couldn't see through Zhao Feng at this moment. They had seen Zhao Feng's eye bloodline before. He had killed Origin Core Realms when he was at the True Lord rank. Even the pursuit of death hadn't taken his life. At this moment, the news of Zhao Feng killing the Emperor of Death hadn't reached the island zone yet. Only a small number of people in the true martial spiritual zone knew. Otherwise, the three kings probably wouldn't even have the courage to negotiate. Zhao Feng, as long as you hand over Zhuang Wen'er, we promise that we won't touch the Azure Flower Continent. The Saint Moon Ant Goddess made her final concession with a serious expression. Next to her, the Demonic Path King and the Golden Skeleton suppressed their anger and were about to explode. Zhao Feng just agreed to the three kings. The sovereigns of the Sacred Alliance couldn't help but speak. Zhao Feng, don't be impulsive. You can't joke around with the survival of the Azure Flower continent, Dao Sovereign Baiyun advised. Zhao Feng's gaze scanned over the upper echelon of the Sacred Alliance, but it only paused on Yu Tianhao for an instant. For the Sacred Alliance, the negotiations of the three kings were already lowering their heads and showing the greatest tolerance and concessions. On the other hand, Zhao Feng had been extremely domineering from start to finish. For a new overwhelming prodigy to do this was already a miracle, and it would be recorded in the history of the Azure Flower continent. Fine, I'll do the trade. Zhao Feng thought for a moment before agreeing. He gently waved his hand, and a surge of magnificent power pushed Zhuang Wen'er in front of the three kings. The three kings were slightly surprised. They didn't think that Zhao Feng would suddenly agree. They nodded their heads and let the upper echelon of the Sacred Alliance leave the hall. However, Zhao Feng stood still and stared at the demonic Path King, making the latter's hair stand on end. Zhao Feng, do you want to go back on your promise? The demonic Path King said. Hehe, go back on my promise? I handed over Zhuang Wen'er just then. I didn't go back on my promise. Zhao Feng revealed a mischievous smile. You. The three kings paused. The hearts of the upper echelon of the alliance that had just left the hall went cold. Could it be that Zhao Feng wanted to add something after the trade and wasn't willing to let it go? Everyone retreat. The upper echelon of the Sacred Alliance retreated, afraid that they would be dragged into the battle between the kings. Only one person stayed behind. He turned around and returned to the hall, standing next to Zhao Feng. However, Yu Xingqian's expression changed, but he couldn't stop him. Soon, only two overwhelming prodigies were left in the hall, facing the three kings. Boom! The entire hall turned to dust as the magnificent power of several kings landed. The powerful shockwave caused the upper echelons of the Sacred Alliance to flee far away from the scene of the incident. However, they still couldn't help but look back, only to see the magnificent power of the three kings floated in the air as they roared. Yu Tianhao? Zhao Feng didn't bother with the three kings and looked toward Yu Tianhao. Zhao Feng, don't think that I'm a burden. It's not difficult for me to deal with a king, Yu Tianhao said. The intent of a half-step king radiated from his body as he activated his unparalleled heaven-battling bloodline. His battle intent surged toward a void god realm king. Zhao Feng, what do you want? The Saint Moon Ant Goddess said unhappily. I already said that the Moon Demon Palace needs to give us an explanation for encroaching on the Azure Flower continent. Otherwise, the Moon Demon Palace will be removed from the Tsang Ocean within 100 days. Zhao Feng's tone became colder. Zhao Feng, don't go too far. The demonic Dao King's face was dark and gloomy, and his rage reached his head as he sent a wave of demonic Dao energy crashing toward Zhao Feng. A part of the sky was covered by scarlet-black demonic flames, and a chaotic spatial domain appeared. Humph! Zhao Feng snickered coldly as his eye intent pierced through heaven and earth. Boom! The magnificent power formed by the demonic Dao King seemed to be struck by 10,000 bolts of lightning and instantly turned into ashes. An intent that surpassed the 9 heavens slammed into the demonic Dao King. Instantly, the three monarchs all felt an irresistible power of heaven and earth, and a rumbling sound came from their souls. Wah! The demonic Dao King instantly spat out a mouthful of blood, and his face paled. Emperor Intent! The Saint Moon Ant Goddess and the Golden Skeleton exclaimed. Then, Zhao Feng took a step forward and slowly raised his hand. Broom! Heaven and earth seemed to tremble, and one could faintly see terrifying lightning ripples with the naked eye. An immortal and undying destructive tribulation lightning aura made the souls of the three kings tremble. Plop! The demonic Dao King from the Moon Demon Palace fell from the sky, and he knelt on the ground as if his body had been struck by lightning. Emperor Zhao Feng, please show mercy. The Saint Moon Ant Goddess and the other two felt as if they had fallen into an abyss. In their shock they begged. Chapter 761. Emperor Zhao Feng, please have mercy. The Saint Moon Ant Goddess paled, and the Golden Skeleton King was scared out of his wits. Emperor Intent? How? The demonic Dao King's face was as white as paper, and his body was covered in scars as if he had lost his soul. Not far away, Zhuangwaner was completely dazed. In just 1 or 2 breaths, the team of the 3 kings had collapsed and surrendered. This completely overturned Zhuangwaner's common sense. Zhuangwaner doubted her own eyes when she saw the Grand Elder's terrified and dejected appearance, and the other 2 kings' expressions of shock and respect. Were those 3 still the unreachable void god realm kings in her eyes? Emperor intent. Yu Tianhao's heart shook. He had barely comprehended half-step king intent recently, and Zhao Feng, who was right next to him, had comprehended emperor intent. With the appearance of emperor intent, the 3 kings lost their will to fight and surrendered. Emperor Zhao, if you have any conditions, please state them. The Saint Moon Ant goddess forced herself to remain calm and had a respectful expression. Zhao Feng's eyes were still locked onto the demonic Dao King of the Moon Demon Palace. The strength that Zhao Feng displayed just now was something that the 3 kings had personally experienced. With just one intent, he had injured the soul of a domain-level king, and with just a wave of his hand, he had injured the demonic Dao King. Regardless of whether or not Zhao Feng had the cultivation of an emperor, just the methods just now meant that even if the 3 kings teamed up, they wouldn't be his match. How strong was a great emperor? Back in the 18 Corners pirate sacred land, so many pirate kings teamed up and were suppressed by Emperor Mu Yin. The 3 kings in front of them were weaker than the peak-tier kings and domain-level kings of the pirate sacred land. Emperor Zhao, the Moon Demon Palace will make up for the losses we have brought to the Azure Flower continent. On behalf of the Moon Demon Palace, I sincerely apologize to you and the people of the Azure Flower continent. The demonic Dao King took a deep breath and half knelt on the ground. His life or death was in Zhao Feng's hands. It wouldn't be too difficult for Zhao Feng to destroy the Moon Demon Palace, and the Pure Moon Spiritual Sect in Black Cliff Palace wouldn't dare to help. That's more like it. Zhao Feng nodded slightly. What he needed was an explanation from the Moon Demon Palace without losing the deal. Hearing this, the 3 kings let out a breath in relief. At the same time, in the distance, the venerables of the Sacred Alliance were watching the situation with interesting expressions. In the sky, in front of Zhao Feng, the 3 kings were filled with fear and trepidation. Who has the blood contract scroll? Zhao Feng suddenly spoke. His voice echoed in the void. I do. Dao Master Baiyun of the Sacred Alliance reacted and handed over a blank blood contract scroll. The Blood Pact scroll had been created by the Heaven's Legacy race, and it was relatively rare to find one in the world. Usually, this scroll would only be used under special circumstances. Blood Pact. The expressions of the 3 kings changed slightly. Zhao Feng took the blank blood contract scroll and stated his conditions. After a while, Zhao Feng signed a blood contract with the 3 kings. The content of the contract was, the 3 sects, including the 3 kings, were not allowed to invade the Azure Flower continent in the future. Not only that, they had to protect the Azure Flower continent if it needed help. Correspondingly, Zhao Feng was not allowed to harm the 3 sects for no reason, and when the 3 sects were in danger, he had to help them to the best of his abilities. Both parties had to abide by the blood contract and fulfill their obligations. In reality, after signing the blood contract, the 3 sects were overjoyed instead of worried. But what they didn't know was that Zhao Feng would head to the continent zone after dealing with the Azure Flower continent. The content of the contract was to the best of his abilities. When the time came, Zhao Feng would be in the continent zone and wouldn't be able to take care of this. After completing the blood contract, the 3 kings left dejectedly. After returning to the Tianlu Islands zone, the 3 kings immediately ordered the Azure Flower continent to become a forbidden zone. Half a month after the matter was settled, the 3 kings received a shocking piece of news. A peerless expert called the Left-Eyed Heavenly Emperor had chased after the Emperor of Death and killed the Emperor of Death after a great battle. Hearing this news, the 3 kings' scalps went numb, and they felt like they were sitting on pins and needles. No matter how slow they were, they could confirm that the Left-Eyed Heavenly Emperor was Zhao Feng. After hearing this news, the 3 kings didn't dare to have any more thoughts. At the same time, in this half a month, the battle between the Scarlet Moon demonic religion and the Azure Flower continent came to an end. 50% of the demonic religion's forces were absorbed by the skeletal division leader, and the remaining 50% were killed. However, after the Scarlet Moon demonic religion was destroyed, there was still no news of the Scarlet Moon Patriarch. The skeletal division leader and the Sacred Alliance were all trying to find the Scarlet Moon Patriarch. Their hard work paid off. On this day, in the extreme north of the northern continent, a sovereign finally found some clues about the Scarlet Moon Patriarch. The skeletal division leader was the first to arrive. Some of the upper echelon elites of the Sacred Alliance arrived in the extreme north and started to narrow down the search area. In the extreme north near a glacier, experts from all over the continent surrounded the area, within a radius of a few hundred miles. The weakest of these experts was at the True Lord rank. Scarlet Moon Patriarch. Come out and die. Scarlet Moon Patriarch. We know you're under the glacier. More than 20 sovereigns had arrived at the glacier. More than half of the sovereigns from the Azure Flower continent had arrived. Among them, the skeletal division leader floated in the air and had a complex expression in its eyes. All the clues confirmed that the Scarlet Moon Patriarch was hiding in this area. Bunch of ants. You're all courting death. An extremely cold voice resounded across several hundred miles. A layer of scarlet blood instantly flowed in the air, dyeing the sky above the glaciers with a layer of blood. Boom! The entire glacier instantly shattered into thousands of pieces amidst a vast blood-colored light. Countless ice rocks and shockwaves swept out for hundreds of miles. Many True Lord ranks were injured in the explosion. Only Venerable Realm experts could barely withstand that round of impact. In the next instant, a demon with a pair of blood-colored wings appeared in the air. There was a scarlet moon on its forehead as it gazed at the sky. From afar, it looked like a scarlet-winged demonic god. Watch out! This Scarlet Moon Patriarch's cultivation is extremely close to that of a king. Near the glacier, the group of continent's peak overlords were on high alert. What they were facing was the most famous demon, in the last few hundred years, of the Azure Flower continent. The Scarlet Moon Patriarch was around 50 to 60 years old, but he was tall and had a pair of blood-colored wings on his back. His eyes were like scarlet stars. Wherever his gaze landed, the peak-tier martial artists were greatly shaken. Division Leader Yogu, how dare you betray me? The Scarlet Moon Patriarch's gaze landed on the skeletal division leader, and a cold light flashed through his eyes. The cold and deadly voice made the skeletal division leader's heart go cold. The Scarlet Moon Patriarch's prestige hadn't been completely erased yet. Looking at the Scarlet Moon Patriarch's aura, even though his cultivation hadn't reached the Void God realm, his battle power was comparable to a normal king. If it was one-on-one, the skeletal division leader's chances of winning would be small. Patriarch, I advise you to surrender. If it's possible, I'll ask Master to give you a chance to live. The skeletal division leader sighed. No matter what, the Scarlet Moon Patriarch was someone it respected in the past. However, their positions were different today. The skeletal division leader knew that Zhao Feng was also paying attention to the situation here. If the Scarlet Moon Patriarch resisted, he wouldn't be able to live even if he managed to escape. Master, even if I die, I won't become someone else's slave. The Scarlet Moon Patriarch snickered coldly. As soon as he finished speaking, the blood-colored wings on his back flapped and turned into a storm that shot into the sky. However, if he wanted to escape, the skeletal division leader would be the first to face him. Of everyone present, the skeletal division leader's cultivation was the closest to his. As long as he could severely injure or kill the skeletal division leader, his chances of escaping would increase dramatically. Everyone back off. The skeletal division leader roared as an array flag appeared in its hand. In that instant, only the skeletal division leader and the Scarlet Moon Patriarch were left in the air. Who? A thick layer of ghost corpse flames appeared in the air and radiated a terrifying aura of death and hatred. 100 pairs of blood-red eyes appeared within the ghost corpse flames. Ghost corpse cursed array. You actually used the 100 Graves forbidden ground. The expression of the Scarlet Moon Patriarch changed dramatically. The aura of death radiating from the ghost corpse flames was more than 1,000 times stronger than the 100 Graves forbidden ground from back then. Every single cursed ghost corpse was close to the Great Origin Core realm. Just the 100 pairs of blood-red eyes were enough to almost shatter the Scarlet Moon Patriarch's soul. The Scarlet Moon Patriarch's heart shook. This wasn't something the Skeletal Division leader could do. However, he had still underestimated the Ghost Corpse Cursed Array's power. This array had absorbed the soul essences of many kings and hundreds of primal core realms. A ghastly white hand radiating an aura of death reached out from the Ghost Corpse flames and grabbed toward the Scarlet Moon Patriarch. Arg! The Scarlet Moon Patriarch screamed as he was grabbed by the ghost hand. A horrifying scene appeared. The Scarlet Moon Patriarch's body started to wither and rot at a visible rate. In just a few breaths, the Scarlet Moon Patriarch had turned into a puddle of blood, and his flesh and soul was absorbed by the Ghost Corpse Cursed Array. Near the glacier, the top elites and peak experts from all over the continent sucked in a cold breath. The upper echelon of the Sacred Alliance trembled, and wariness appeared in their eyes. The elites of the Scarlet Moon Patriarch, that had been subdued by the Skeletal Division leader, were filled with fear and respect. It was hard to imagine that the Scarlet Moon Patriarch, whose name had shaken the world, was killed by the Skeletal Division leader's array, without even being able to fight back. After this battle, the Skeletal Division leader's name spread across the continent. It had taken over the Scarlet Moon demonic religion, created the Scarlet Moon Palace, and became a forbidden figure in the Azure Flower continent. However, only a small number of people knew that the Skeletal Division leader was Zhao Feng's servant. Canopy Great Country, Iron Blood Religion. An ice blue screen showed the scene of the Scarlet Moon Patriarch turning into a puddle of blood. Patriarch Hong and Tianma were stunned and couldn't calm down for a long time. The matters in the Azure Flower continent are pretty much over. Zhao Feng waved his hand, and the screen disappeared. Chapter 762. Canopy Great Country in a Barren Desert. A black-haired man and a purple-haired youth faced each other from afar. Their robes fluttered freely in the sandstorm that filled the sky. Zhao Feng, I didn't think that the difference between us would be so big. However, I still want to fight. Yu Tianhao's voice was low, but a strong fighting spirit surged in his deep black eyes. Under the stimulation of this battle intent, Yu Tianhao's essence, energy, and soul all grew stronger, and his half-step king will also rose. Facing such an unyielding opponent, Zhao Feng sighed in his heart and admired him. If it was anyone else, they wouldn't have the courage to fight against such a difference. Yu Tianhao, our promise of 10 years isn't up yet. Zhao Feng smiled, a carefree expression on his face. 7 years had passed since the battle near the Iron Blood Religion. 10 years wasn't enough. I'm about to go to the Yu family in the continent zone. I don't know how long this trip will take. Since we've met, let's fight in advance. Yu Tianhao obviously knew that the time wasn't up yet. However, the powerful Zhao Feng had ignited his bloodline's potential. Continent zone? Zhao Feng's eyes twinkled, but he didn't say anything. Slowly, the auras of the two started to spread in the sandstorm. A magnificent power of the Void God realm appeared from Zhao Feng's body and connected heaven and earth. The magnificent power of an emperor allowed him to stand at the top. Just in terms of aura alone, Yu Tianhao was at a disadvantage and felt like he was suffocating. However, his will to fight was unyielding and undying. He would become stronger the stronger he met, the stronger he was. If it was a normal half-step king, they probably wouldn't even have the thought to resist. However, Yu Tianhao could still resist and continue to ignite his battle intent. There's such a powerful and unique bloodline outside of the 10,000 ancient races. Zhao Feng exclaimed. The fan universe's bloodline isn't the only one in the 10,000 ancient races. When you get to the continent zone, you'll know that there's an imperial bloodline. Yu Tianhao harumphed coldly. Imperial path bloodline list? Zhao Feng recalled that there was indeed an imperial Dao bloodline ranking in his database of memories, but he hadn't paid much attention to it. That was because the imperial bloodline ranking did not originate from the archaic era. Instead, it was some bloodlines that were born after the archaic era. The bloodlines of the 10,000 ancient races are on the verge of extinction. On the other hand, the imperial Dao bloodline rankings are constantly competing, and only the strong survive. Yu Tianhao's voice revealed a strong sense of confidence. Everyone knew that the 10,000 ancient races came from the immemorial era. However, it was not necessarily the case that the more ancient it was, the more powerful it would be. For example, the 8 great god eyes were born after the ancient era, when the fan universe first opened. Of course, the 8 great god eyes were also closely related to the ancient era. As time progressed, the bloodlines of the 10,000 races became thinner and thinner, while the bloodlines of the later generations continued to evolve or mutate. The heaven-battling bloodline comes from the imperial Dao bloodline, and isn't any weaker than the 10,000 ancient races. My unparalleled heaven-battling bloodline is one of the best imperial bloodlines. As soon as Yu Tianhao finished his words, the bloodline factor in his body began to burn. Wu, an ancient and mysterious, icy shadow, in the shape of a human overlapped with Yu Tianhao's body. Instantly, Yu Tianhao's actions were exactly the same as the icy cold shadow behind him. His every action contained battle intent that could make gods and ghosts weep, and he destroyed all the power around him. Boom! The magnificent power nearby started to shake, and a part of it was even torn apart. In that instant, Yu Tianhao seemed to be possessed by the god of war, and the air around him was covered in a dominating orange light that shot into the sky. If it was a normal magnificent power, it would have been pushed away by Yu Tianhao's power. Heaven battling axe. Yu Tianhao's eyes were like dark stars as he waved his hand, and a cracking sound came from the air. One could faintly see an orange axe that slashed apart the magnificent power of an emperor and landed on Zhao Feng's body. Facing this slash, Zhao Feng's expression changed slightly. Under the pressure of an opponent like him, Yu Tianhao's battle intent was ignited. Break! Zhao Feng slowly thrust out his fist, and an ancient city of illusions appeared in the air. It was full of mysteries. Even with Yu Tianhao's battle intent, his mind shook. Boom! The two prodigies clashed for the first time in 7 years. Sand filled the sky and formed a sandstorm that swept everything within 100 miles. Within the sandstorm, a black-haired male groaned and took a few steps back. Yu Tianhao's face was slightly pale, and there were burn marks on his body. Zhao Feng's attacks were extremely terrifying, and he had merged the illusion maze domain into them. The illusion maze domain could create illusions in its attacks. Just the first exchange had injured Yu Tianhao's body and mind. Your cultivation has been suppressed to the half-step king level? Yu Tianhao's eyes twinkled. He had noticed something in the exchange just then. If Zhao Feng's true yuan was at the king level, he could definitely injure, or even kill him instantly. Suppressed, a bitter smile appeared on Zhao Feng's face. His Zhen Yuan cultivation had fallen to half-step king warrior level. In reality, when he faced the 3 kings, Zhao Feng's cultivation was at the boundary between the origin core realm and the void god realm. Of course, Zhao Feng's intent was still at the emperor level, and his soul was similar to normal emperors after being refined by the god tribulation lightning. However, it was still weakened by 30 to 40% when fighting the Emperor of Death. Cultivation and lifespan were the fastest to decline. Zhao Feng estimated that his lifespan had decreased by 50 years, which was more than half of a normal person's lifespan. It was very difficult for his power to affect the cursed words of death. This was a power that surpassed normal systems. Yu Tianhao, even if you're at the half-step king level, you won't be able to last 3 moves against me. Zhao Feng soon calmed down. As long as his intent and God's spiritual eye were still there, his strength could recover quickly like the child demigod. He could even recultivate the golden koan sacred lightning body and the 5 elemental wind lightning technique. However, the prerequisite was that he could dissolve the cursed words of death. 3 moves? Then let's settle this in 3 moves. Yu Tianhao's battle intent rose. Even though he was injured, his battle power didn't decrease. The bloodline in his body boiled, and the icy shadow behind him grew in size. The will and battle prowess it gave off grew stronger and stronger. Unparalleled under the heavens. Yu Tianhao thrust out his palm, and an orange light shot out like the sun. The power contained within the palm was comparable to domain-level kings. The terrifying battle intent within the attack seemed to materialize, and it charged at Zhao Feng's soul and mental strength. My battle power has increased yet again. Zhao Feng's expression changed slightly. However, he was not afraid at all. Once again, he threw out an ordinary punch. This time, Zhao Feng merged the illusion maze domain and the mystic ice domain at the same time. Boom! The instant the two clashed, the power of ice froze everything within several hundred miles. Bam! Yu Tianhao flew back, and a layer of frost appeared on his body. His body stiffened, and the blood leaking out of his mouth froze. Third move. Yu Tianhao gritted his teeth, and his entire body and the cold figure behind him released a brilliant light that seemed to be able to devour heaven and earth. His battle intent could even become a peak-tier king. In that instant, Yu Tianhao's battle power was comparable to a peak-tier king's. It's over. Zhao Feng took a deep breath and punched out, and the three spatial domains stacked on top of each other. Boom! An earthquake seemed to happen in the desert where the two were standing, and a 100-mile crack appeared. Wah! The cold figure behind Yu Tianhao's back instantly shattered, and his face went pale. Plop! His body fell to the ground, and he instantly fainted. Yu Tianhao, I didn't expect you to form king intent in the last 3 moves. Zhao Feng murmured. He scanned Yu Tianhao with his divine sense, and found that his state was similar to last time. The unparalleled heaven-battling bloodline would continuously increase his battle power during battle, but he would have to pay a similar price afterwards. Simply put, it was overdraft. Shua! With a thought from Zhao Feng, magnificent power sent the unconscious Yu Tianhao several hundred miles away. Whoosh! Sovereign Yu Xingqian tore through the air and caught Yu Tianhao in his arms. Zhao Feng, I'll remember your kindness today. Yu Xingqian bowed deeply in Zhao Feng's direction. Zhao Feng smiled and nodded his head before leaving the desert and heading toward the main headquarters of the Iron Blood religion. So, before the battle, Yu Xingqian had gone to find Zhao Feng. There wasn't any suspense in the outcome of this battle. Zhao Feng promised Yu Xingqian that he wouldn't injure Yu Tianhao too badly, and he would use his unparalleled heaven-battling bloodline as much as possible. Reality proved that, even though Zhao Feng's cultivation had dropped to the half-step king level, he could easily deal with a king. A while later, Zhao Feng returned to the Iron Blood religion. Meow meow. The little thieving cat popped its head out and curiously inspected the crowd. Patriarch Hong, Tianma, the skeletal division leader, and company were all present. Master, the Scarlet Moon Palace that I've created has become the #1 force in the Azure Flower continent. It will be able to protect the balance and order of the Azure Flower continent. The skeletal division leader reported. Half of the forces of the Scarlet Moon demonic religion had been absorbed by the Scarlet Moon Palace. However, even then, the Scarlet Moon Palace's strength surpassed the Scarlet Moon demonic religion at its peak. Just the 100 corpse cursed array controlled by the skeletal division leader could kill normal kings. Skeletal division leader, Zhao Feng ordered. From today onwards, you will guard the Azure Flower continent. Once the Scarlet Moon Palace stabilizes, you will regain your freedom. Master, hearing that, the skeletal division leader was filled with excitement and disbelief. After following Zhao Feng for so many years, it had improved a lot. It didn't think that it would regain its freedom one day. Zhao Feng had his own reasons for doing this. The skeletal division leader and the 100 corpse cursed array had reached their peak. The former could at most become a king. No matter how strong the 100 corpse cursed array was, it wouldn't pose much of a threat to emperors. Zhao Feng's target was the continent zone and emperors. Instead of that, it was better to leave the skeletal division leader in the Azure Flower continent. It would be better for it to cultivate on its own. After saying all this, Zhao Feng got up and prepared to leave the Azure Flower continent. Before leaving, Zhao Feng gave the skeletal division leader a mission. The child demigod has left my control. He's definitely hiding in a corner and cultivating. After I leave, you need to pay attention to his movements, Zhao Feng said in a solemn tone. The child demigod was definitely afraid of Zhao Feng right now, and didn't dare to show himself. Zhao Feng didn't have the energy to chase after the child demigod. The two weren't in a life and death situation. Chapter 763. On this day, a ray of lightning broke through the limits of the domain and entered the limitless ocean. Shua, a purple-haired youth, floated in the limitless ocean with a silver-gray cat on his shoulder. He gave a deep look at the azure flower continent before a pair of scarlet wings extended from his back, and he flew toward the depths of the limitless ocean. The human and cat were obviously Zhao Feng and the little thieving cat. When his cultivation dropped to the half-step king level, Zhao Feng found that the rate of his weakening increased. The main reason was that kings had a stronger foundation and were more resistant to the cursed words of death. In other words, if a disciple at the ascended realm was hit by the cursed words of death, their life force and cultivation would instantly wither, and they would turn into a pile of white bones. This increased the urgency in Zhao Feng's heart. I need to go to the continent zone while I still have some strength, Zhao Feng murmured. The sage had given him 3 ways to resolve the cursed words of death. The third one required him to sacrifice a lot. The first 2 could only be done in the continent zone far away. Apart from that, Zhao Feng also wanted to go to the continent zone to find his master, Duan Muqing, and Zhao Yufei. Due to various reasons, Zhao Feng had to go to the continent zone. After flying for several days, Zhao Feng arrived at the Void Ocean Spiritual Palace in the Ancient Azure Islands Zone. The Ancient Azure Islands Zone was the island zone where the Azure Flower Continent was, and next to it was the Tianlu Islands Zone. If it was a normal person, they obviously wouldn't have the right to use the teleportation array. However, Zhao Feng was a disciple of the mystic True Sacred Clan, a 3-star sect in the True Martial Sacred Land. Furthermore, he only needed to release Emperor Intent or King Intent to enjoy the special benefits. In this world, the strong were respected. Of course, every time Zhao Feng used the teleportation array, he would need to spend a large amount of precious primal crystal stones. The teleportation array in the Void Ocean Spiritual Palace was limited and could only be used to teleport to nearby Void Ocean Spiritual Palaces. After using it several times, Zhao Feng finally arrived at the True Martial Sacred Land. After arriving at the True Martial Sacred Land, Zhao Feng could not help but look at the ancient sacred peak at the center. The spiritual zone teleportation formation was on the myriad ancient saint peak. Other than that, the entrances and connections of the legacies and secret realms of various sizes were also located on the 10,000 ancient sacred peak. Zhao Feng was suspicious that the child demigod had a way to enter the demigod Forgotten Garden. After all, the child demigod had a portion of demigod intent. Of course, even if Zhao Feng confirmed that the child demigod was in the demigod Forgotten Garden, he wouldn't be able to enter. Zhao Feng didn't stay for long in the True Martial Sacred Land. He used the spiritual zone teleportation formation and directly arrived at the Floating Dream Sacred Land. The Zhangxi has 3 spirit realms. The border of the Floating Dream Sacred Land is close to the Nanlin Sea. A map appeared in Zhao Feng's mind. The Nanlin Sea was close to the southern side of the continent zone, while the Ash-Gray Sea was further away. The continent dynasty could not reach it. That was to say, as long as Zhao Feng entered the Nanlin Sea, he would be at the edge of the continent zone. In that area, the dynasty's influence was slightly stronger. Immediately, Zhao Feng used the spiritual zone teleportation formation and teleported to the border of the Floating Dream Spiritual Zone. During this period of time, Zhao Feng didn't have enough peak-grade primal crystal stones, so he contacted Emperor Zimu and asked for some primal crystal stones. When facing Emperor Zimu, Zhao Feng's aura was very faint, but he didn't hide his emperor intent. Emperor Zimu didn't think too much about it. He just wanted to get on good terms with Zhao Feng. so he obviously gave him a large amount of primal crystal stones. Emperor Zhao, your name as the left-eyed heavenly emperor is extremely famous in the Zhangxi. Even mystic light realm sacred lords are wary of you. Emperor Zimu's tone was filled with respect. However, he didn't know that Zhao Feng's true cultivation had already fallen to the great origin core realm. Zhao Feng didn't stay for long at Emperor Zimu's place. After scamming some primal crystal stones, he said that he had urgent matters to attend to and left. On a certain day, Zhao Feng appeared in a void ocean spiritual palace at the very edge of the floating dream spiritual zone. After that, he teleported from the void ocean spiritual palace to the void ocean spiritual palace where Nanlin Hai was. The void ocean spiritual palaces were common in the limitless ocean. Apparently, they were created by the Lord Dynasty after they conquered the continent and the 10,000 oceans. But now, the Lord Dynasty had lost control over the Zhangxi, but they still had some influence over the Nanlin Sea. The Nanlin Sea was rich in resources, far more than the Zhangxi. There were even 4 spirit realm sacred lands in this great sea region. The journey from the Nanlin Sea to the continent zone is very long. Zhao Feng sighed in his heart. His soul power had also started to weaken after his cultivation dropped to the origin core realm. Right now his soul was still at the early stage or middle stage void god realm. It was much weaker than a peak emperor's soul at its peak. If my soul falls back to the origin core realm, most of my emperor intent will go into hibernation. Zhao Feng felt more and more pressured. Emperor intent was built on the soul. If one soul power wasn't enough, the emperor intent would fall into a temporary slumber. If one's soul became stronger in the future, the emperor intent would slowly awaken. After all, intent focused on comprehension and intent. The cursed words of death couldn't affect one's thoughts and comprehension. After entering the Nanlin Sea, Zhao Feng started to use the Void Ocean Spiritual Palace. As long as his emperor intent still existed, the Void Ocean Spiritual Palace's palace masters would give him face. Over at the Nanlin Sea, many of the palace lords of the Void Ocean Spiritual Palace were kings, and the cultivation culture here was slightly better than the Tsang Ocean. Half a month later, Zhao Feng passed through a spiritual sacred land in the Nanlin Sea. At this moment, due to the weakening of his soul, a portion of Zhao Feng's intent had fallen to the level of a king. However, even a king was high up in the Nanlin Sea. The palace lords of the Void Ocean spiritual palaces would give him face when they saw such a young king. My cultivation and soul are dropping faster and faster. Zhao Feng's heart became solemn. He estimated that his cultivation would drop back to the true spirit realm before he even reached the continent zone. Once it dropped back to the true spirit realm, the rate of decline would be several times faster. In this situation, Zhao Feng had no choice but to prepare himself. Purple Soul Sea. Zhao Feng's soul eye bloodline power had dropped dramatically, and his soul sea was only 200 to 300 yards wide. However, the center of his soul sea and the eye bloodline lake that connected to the ancient dream realm weren't affected by the cursed words of death. Furthermore, the 700 to 800 mysterious symbols of lightning in his soul sea still gave off an immortal and undying god tribulation aura. The source of the god's spiritual eye and the power of the god tribulation lightning are forbidden areas in my body. Zhao Feng let out a sigh of relief. In other areas, Zhao Feng's god's spiritual eye could see wisps of black and blood-colored light entering every cell in his body. This dark power could pass through both the physical and the soul. Soul attacks were useless against it. While his intent was still at the void god's level, Zhao Feng continued to travel. 2 months later, a streak of dim lightning entered a vast ancient land. When it entered the force field, some of the nearby sovereigns exclaimed lightly, "A measly true spirit realm can pass through the outside world?" A small origin core realm elder revealed a weird expression. This vast land wasn't a continent zone, but an extremely large great island zone, called the Tianfeng Great Island Zone. Nearby were a dozen or so small island zones similar to the Azure Flower Continent. The Tianfeng Great Island Zone was located in a great location. It was close to the continent and connected to the ocean, and it was ruled by the Lord Dynasty. Apparently, This large island zone was ruled by a marquis from the Great Gon Lord dynasty. Whoosh! An old man who was as skinny as a twig entered the Nanlan Sea, a large island region adjacent to the continent, surrounded by streams of lightning and lightning. This elder's face was somewhat similar to Zhao Feng's when he was young. Meow meow. A silver-gray thieving cat stood on the elder's shoulder and waved its paws in excitement. Little thieving cat, I'm already in this state. What are you still excited about? Zhao Feng said with a depressed expression. His lifespan and state of existence had decreased by more than 95%. His cultivation had dropped to the true spirit realm, and over 90% of his emperor intent had fallen asleep. It's too late to enter the continent zone. Looks like I can only give it my all. Zhao Feng sighed. Luckily, he had already put the ancient metal ring and some other treasures into the dimension of his left eye. Go! Zhao Feng's body and soul burned in the wind and lightning and turned into a pile of ash. Wang, his state of existence, true yuan, and soul all burned and created a strong surge of power. God's eye leaves the body, a transparent purple eye that seemed to exist between the physical and the illusory world entered the dimension with a speed that surpassed emperors. Boom! Zhao Feng's state of existence, true yuan, and soul power were all destroyed. The power of the cursed words of death was also destroyed. Shu, a black and blood-colored light turned into nothingness and disappeared into samsara dimension. Zhao Feng's God's spiritual eye, and the forbidden zone of the God tribulation lightning, was a place where the power of the cursed words of death couldn't corrode. Otherwise, even if Zhao Feng gave up his body, he wouldn't be able to escape from the cursed words of death. I finally escaped from the cursed words of death by following the third method. Zhao Feng let out a long breath. When the God's eye left the body, his senses were extremely strong, and he instantly scanned across a range of several dozen thousand miles. At the same time, in this ancient land, in a remote and deathly silent ancient forest. You're from the Yin family. A pale-faced youth was holding a broken saber in his hand, barely supporting his body. Next to him was the corpse of a tiger-leopard beast. Its cultivation had reached the true spirit realm when it was alive. Zhao Feng, you're a once-in-a-thousand-years genius of the Zhao family, and you've reached the true spirit realm at the age of 14, after joining the 10,000 Sacred Clan. You're a huge threat to the Yin family. Hee. If it wasn't for the fact that you risked entering the Wuxia forest, we wouldn't have this chance. A few masked figures said coldly and proudly. One of them had even reached the true lord rank. Arg! The youth called Zhao Feng screamed as he was sent flying by a masked male in black. Sir, this brat's dead. Not good. There seems to be disciples of the 10,000 Sacred Clan approaching. The elder at the front immediately ordered to retreat. Whoosh! Right at this moment, a bolt of purple lightning flashed across the sky above the Wuxia forest. An inconceivable scene appeared before his eyes. The left eye of the youth called Zhao Feng, who was supposed to be dead, turned purple and released a surge of intent that quickly faded. Chapter 764. Northern part of the Tianfeng Zone. Yunling Zhao Clan. Zhao Feng? The memory of an unfamiliar youth appeared in Zhao Feng's mind. At this moment, the purple soul sea was absorbing the memories of a remnant soul. Coincidentally, this youth had the same surname as Zhao Feng. With Zhao Feng's God's spiritual eye, he soon gained control of this body. Not good. His organs have been severely injured, and he's lost too much blood. Zhao Feng's expression changed slightly. Although he had been reincarnated through possession, the youth's body was basically dead before he took over the body. This was good for him. Zhao Feng wouldn't feel too guilty. After all, if he hadn't come, this youth would have died already. Immediately, Zhao Feng circulated less than 1/10 of his intent to heal the wounds on his body and reactivate the life force in his body. Because this body was about to die, its life force hadn't been extinguished, so the entire process was quite smooth. This body was quite suitable. Zhao Feng didn't want to find another body. Next, there was something very important that Zhao Feng wanted to confirm. Zhao Feng scanned his body and soul with his God's spiritual eye. Who? Luckily, the cursed words of death have been completely destroyed. Zhao Feng let out a long breath. The golden cicada shedding technique he had used could only keep the god's spiritual eyes forbidden area. Most of his soul power and body had been eroded by the cursed words of death. Usually there were 3 ways to be reborn. The first was to steal someone's body and revive. This method was relatively simple, but it had a lot of risk. The second was to revive from a drop of blood. The child demigod's method was quite high-end and was built on the foundation of a strong body and intent. The third was to revive through reincarnation. If one was lucky, they would revive into a disciple of a 10,000 ancient race bloodline, or a superfamily. If they were unlucky, they would revive into a pig or dog. However, if one could control the third method, it would be perfect. Relatively speaking, Zhao Feng's method was the most low-end, but it was also the only method he could use. Zhao Feng didn't know how to use blood rebirth. Even the Emperor of Death might not be able to use it. Even someone as strong as the child demigod could only cultivate the golden Kuan sacred body to a very high level when he was at the peak of the demigod realm. Moreover, blood rebirth didn't suit Zhao Feng. This was because his flesh and blood couldn't stop the power of the cursed words of death. Once he was reborn, the power of the cursed words of death would continue. On the other hand, the lowest level of possession and rebirth, or in other words, reincarnation, was more suitable for Zhao Feng. This body is still young and has just reached the true spirit realm. It's very suitable. Zhao Feng inspected it and was very satisfied. If the target was strong, it wouldn't be suitable for Zhao Feng either. It wasn't that Zhao Feng didn't want to possess a stronger target. It was that in order to stop the cursed words of death, Zhao Feng would have to give up 90% of his soul power, and even his physical body. With just 10% of his soul power, he wouldn't be able to take over a target at the Void God realm or higher. Even if the target was at the Origin Core realm or higher, it would still struggle. If it was at the True Spirit realm, it would be much easier. The previous owner of this body had just died, which saved Zhao Feng the trouble of finding him. At this moment in time, Zhao Feng let out a breath in his heart. Firstly, the cursed words of death had been dissolved. Secondly, the talent of this body was much stronger than in his previous life, and it was more suitable for cultivating the golden Kuan sacred lightning body and the 5 elemental wind lightning technique. The only unfortunate thing was that the bloodline of the mystic ice-scaled race wouldn't be able to continue. However, there were gains and losses in this world, and nothing was perfect. Soon after, Zhao Feng started to digest the memories of this body. The previous owner of this body, Zhao Feng, came from a mid-tier family in the Great Island Zone called the Yunling Zhao family. The Zhao clan and the Yin family were both from the Yunling mountain range, and they had a lot of enmity between them. Zhao Feng was a peerless genius of the Zhao family, and he had successfully entered the 10,000 Sacred Clan half a year ago. The 10,000 Sacred Clan was a 3-star force of the Lord Dynasty. Even though the 10,000 Sacred Clan had fallen to a 2-star power, it had a strong foundation and a long history. It surpassed some of the 2-star sects from the true martial sacred land. This undoubtedly made the Yin family wary and uneasy. Coincidentally this time, Zhao Feng was carrying out a mission with the disciple of the clan. Because he was a loner and didn't have a good relationship with his peers, the Yin family was able to find a chance. Interesting, this body has the talent of a high-tier earth spiritual body, and it also has a bloodline inheritance. However, his parents died, and he was an orphan. He only had a grandfather. Zhao Feng found out a lot of interesting information. This included the fact that this body also had a fiancé, who was engaged to a family, and the fiancé was from a rather powerful family. It could be said that this body carried the greatest hope of the Yunling Zhao clan. Since I've inherited this body, I'll help you complete your wish from before you died. Of course, apart from the fiancé. A faint smile appeared on Zhao Feng's face. The youth in this body was extremely handsome, and he surpassed the Zhao Feng from his previous life. The only flaw was that he was too loner. So. Right at this moment, the sound of flying came from not far away. Junior Marshal Brother Zhao. Junior Marshal Brother Zhao's injuries are very serious. Junior Marshal Sister Wan, quickly heal him. There was a total of 5 or 6 disciples, all of whom had the lowest cultivation at the true spirit realm. The leader was a youth in black, and he revealed a weird expression. He was the captain of this mission, and his cultivation had reached the true lord rank. Zhao Feng was lying on the ground, and a gentle girl in blue was using a water technique to heal him. In his memories, the information of these disciples soon appeared in his mind. The youth in black was Senior Marshal Brother Guang. His name was Guang Tian, and he had good connections among the core disciples. The gentle girl in blue was called Wan Rong, and her cultivation had also reached the true mystic rank. In the crowd, Zhao Feng's cultivation was the lowest. This was because he was young and hadn't been in the clan for long. In his memories, the 10 strongest core disciples of the 10,000 sacred clan were all at least at the origin core realm, and there were even 2 or 3 at the great origin core realm. The disciples of the 10,000 sacred clan were divided into outer disciples, core disciples, and core disciples. The disciples present were all at least core disciples. It's very weird that Junior Marshal Brother Zhao was able to survive such a fatal injury. Senior Marshal Sister Wan was slightly surprised as she healed Zhao Feng. The injuries to Zhao Feng's body had reached his heart and organs, and they were extremely serious. However, these fatal wounds were coagulated and did not continue to bleed. During the healing process, Senior Marshal Sister Wan even gave Zhao Feng a precious healing spiritual pill. Zhao Feng circulated his intent and spread the energy of the medicine across the heavily injured areas, so that Senior Marshal Sister Wan could heal them. A while later, Zhao Feng's injuries had miraculously healed 70 to 80%. I'm done. Zhao Feng patted the dust off his body and casually stood up as he inspected his surroundings. The gentle Senior Marshal Sister Wan couldn't help but reveal a weird expression. The current Zhao Feng gave her an illusion that was different from the past. The youth in black, Senior Marshal Brother Guang, furrowed his eyebrows as coldness flashed through his eyes. Junior Marshal Brother Zhao, if you keep doing things your own way, you won't be so lucky to be able to keep your life. Senior Marshal Brother Guang didn't ask why Zhao Feng was injured. There was a true spirit realm beast next to him, so they just thought that Zhao Feng was severely injured in a fight. Only Senior Marshal Sister Wan, who was responsible for healing, saw some clues. Senior Marshal Brother Guang's tone was very heavy. Zhao Feng didn't say anything, but disdain and coldness appeared in his eyes. With his analysis, it wasn't hard for him to see that Senior Marshal Brother Guang had something to do with him being ambushed by the Yin family. During the mission, Senior Marshal Brother Guang and the original Zhao Feng had an argument, and the lonely Zhao Feng had acted alone in anger. However, according to what Zhao Feng knew, Senior Marshal Brother Guang was very popular and had many friends. However, this time, Senior Marshal Brother Guang and the lonely Zhao Feng had an argument. Coincidentally, Zhao Feng had been ambushed by the Yin family. If it wasn't for the fact that Senior Marshal Sister Wan didn't want him to be alone, she probably wouldn't have found his corpse. Senior Marshal Sister Wan, I owe you one. Zhao Feng didn't bother with Senior Marshal Brother Guang, and faintly nodded his head towards Senior Marshal Sister Wan Rong. You don't know what's good for you. Senior Marshal Brother Guang waved his sleeves in anger. Meow meow. Right at this moment, a silver-gray cat jumped out from a corner of the forest. What a cute cat. Love appeared in Senior Marshal Sister Wan's eyes. The cat had an arrogant expression, and its black eyes seemed to be able to see through one's soul. Meow meow. The little thieving cat landed on Zhao Feng's shoulder and rubbed its head against Zhao Feng. Little thieving cat. Zhao Feng reached out and gently stroked its fur with a joyful expression. Life changes, things remain the same, but people change. However, a person's sole intent was the true core. The physical body was just a bag of skin. For people like Zhao Feng and the Emperor of Death, sole intent was the true source of immortality. Even though Zhao Feng had reincarnated, he was still Zhao Feng. The little thieving cat was still with him. This cat, Senior Marshal Brother Guang, Wan Rong, and company were all stunned. At this moment, Zhao Feng was calm and had an indescribable aura around him. I forgot to tell you. This is a cat that I just tamed in the Wuxia forest. Zhao Feng added. Senior Marshal Brother Guang and company didn't ask any further. This cat was so small and didn't seem to have any battle power. Only an eccentric person like Zhao Feng, or some women, would choose a cat that was cute but weak in combat. After saying this, the human and cat walked into the depths of the Wuxia forest. Zhao Feng, what are you doing? Senior Marshal Brother Guang roared. I'm going alone, Zhao Feng said without even turning his head around. Junior Marshal Brother Zhao, there are traces of sovereigns in the depths of the Wuxia forest. It's dangerous for you to go alone. Senior Marshal Sister Wan Rong couldn't help but say. Senior Marshal Brother Guang and company had disdainful expressions, as if they were looking at an idiot. This guy almost died when he went alone, but he still hasn't changed. A disciple in blue snickered coldly. Junior Marshal Brother Zhao, don't blame me, the leader, for being so stubborn. If you can't complete the mission and die in the Wuxia forest, it has nothing to do with me. Senior Marshal Brother Guang snickered coldly. Even if Zhao Feng could survive, he wouldn't be able to complete the clan's mission alone, and would most likely be punished when he returned to the clan. However, the human and cat walked into the depths of the Wuxia forest, as if they didn't hear anything. The gentle senior apprentice Sister Wan looked at the departing figure. She actually felt a mysterious, legendary charm from the back of that figure. Chapter 765. One human and one cat walked towards the depths of the Wuxia forest. Zhao Feng had his own plans. If he moved alone, it wouldn't be easy for him to expose himself, which suited the original owner's personality. This was the first reason. The second reason was that Zhao Feng wanted to see how much battle power he had left after taking over this body. Zhao Feng didn't bother attacking normal beasts under the true spirit realm. However, a small number of beasts still attacked Zhao Feng. Crack. Boom. A few trees nearby were directly broken by some kind of huge force. A Yao cow with a flaming tail charged at Zhao Feng. A beast that has just entered the true spirit realm? Zhao Feng didn't even look at it. He waved his hand and a faint red true yuan shot out, turning into a sharp blade of fire that was 2 yards long. Shwa! Plop! The demonic ox's huge body was directly cut in half at the waist. Even its heart was cut into pieces. It breathed its last. After dealing with the bull, Zhao Feng walked towards the depths of the Wuxia forest. Apparently, there were even some intelligent beasts at the origin core realm in the depths of the Wuxia forest. Not long after Zhao Feng's figure left. So. A few masked figures quickly approached. The flaming barbarian bull was killed in one blow. The eyes of the leading elder twinkled. That brat just stabilized his injuries. How could he do this? Without the battle power of a true lord rank, it'd be hard to do this. The few masked men discussed in low voices. They were bewildered. They could originally exclude Zhao Feng, but the flaming barbarian bull's injuries were of the fire element. It should be someone else, and they're at least at the true lord rank. The old man in the lead had a confident look on his face. The other masked men also showed questioning looks. Firstly, the person who attacked didn't even bother to harvest the flaming barbarian bull's body. Think about it. The parts of the flaming barbarian bull's body, especially the blood and heart, would be extremely beneficial to his cultivation of fire. The elder smiled and said. As soon as he said this, the others all agreed. Indeed, if it were Zhao Feng, there was no way he would ignore the blazing barbaric bull's corpse. Chase. The masked men followed Zhao Feng's footprints and chased after him. After half a cup of tea's time, the figure of a man and a cat entered his field of vision. There's no one around. Go. A total of 4 or 5 masked men, led by the old man, flew towards Zhao Feng. As if sensing something, Zhao Feng turned around. Strangely, the young man looked at the masked men with a faint smile. That smile, the old man's heart skipped a beat, and he felt uneasy. Although the youth in front of him looked exactly the same as Zhao Feng, the feeling he gave off was that they were two completely different people. Ha ha ha. Junior, I didn't expect you to be able to escape death. Unfortunately, there will be no future good fortune. The masked man laughed sinisterly. Previously, this young man had been tortured to death by them, so he was full of confidence. You know I'm not dead? Zhao Feng had a strange look on his face. He smiled brightly and slowly waved his hand. Shua. A few flame blades that were as sharp as blades cut through the air, accompanied by the strange sound of thunder. Watch out. The expression of the leading elder changed dramatically. However, Zhao Feng's attack was too fast, and their strength was still at the youth who had been tortured to death. Arg! Several screams sounded as the 4 true human rank, or true mystic rank masked men, were all cut in half, and their bodies were burnt. You're not Zhao Feng, the leading elder exclaimed. This strength had already reached the true lord rank. Zhao Feng definitely didn't have such an intent. Tell me, how do you know I'm not dead? Zhao Feng walked towards the elder as if he was taking a stroll. The elder paused and became enraged. Junior, even if your strength has reached the true lord rank, you're only on par with me. After saying this, a simple broken saber appeared in the old man's hand, and he slashed out with lightning speed, creating a powerful state of might. One could only see a golden scale-like saber wave. Boom! Boom! Several nearby trees were instantly chopped into ashes. It's a fragment of an earth-grade weapon used by a sovereign. Zhao Feng was slightly surprised. It was obvious that this fragment of an earth-grade weapon was the elder's biggest trump card. The old man had a feeling that the Zhao Feng before him was not as simple as he seemed. He could not get rid of the unease he felt. Zhao Feng snickered coldly and took a step forward. In an instant, an unparalleled intent shot through the sky. Arg! The broken blade in the elder's hand fell to the ground, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was deathly pale, and his mind was heavily injured. He was suppressed by an invisible force of will. Even if Zhao Feng only had 1/10 of his soul power and intent, it wasn't something a measly true lord rank could fight against. Intent? The elder couldn't believe it. The opponent's intent had reached a level that he couldn't see through. Shua! A hand heavily struck the elder's head. Soul-searching technique. A misty purple light appeared in Zhao Feng's left eye. The elder's heart shook. In front of the opponent's powerful intent and soul power, he couldn't fight back at all. As I thought. Zhao Feng took back his hand and got his answer. It was just as he had guessed. There was a problem with Senior Marshal Brother Guang. Zhao Feng's death was because Senior Marshal Brother Guang purposely fought with him and left him alone. The second time, this was the connection between Senior Marshal Brother Guang and the elder from the Yin family. This elder was a guest advisor of the Yin family. Guang Tian. Zhao Feng murmured Senior Marshal Brother Guang's name as a sharp light flashed through his eyes. Since he had used Zhao Feng's body to revive, then he would do his best to fulfill Zhao Feng's wish. However, Senior Marshal Brother Guang was a core disciple, and his master was a Void God Realm King. According to what Zhao Feng knew, the 10,000 Sacred Clan was once a 3-star power at its peak. Even though it had fallen, it still had more than a dozen kings and several emperors. Even if the 3 2-star sects of the Tianlu Island zone teamed up, they wouldn't be on the same level as the 10,000 Sacred Clan. The 10,000 Sacred Clan was definitely one of the top peak 2-star sections. That's good too. I can obtain more resources and a better environment to recultivate in. Zhao Feng nodded his head. Shua. With a thought, an ancient metal ring appeared on Zhao Feng's finger. These resources are enough for me to recultivate to the half-step king level. However, it won't be enough for me to reach the Void God realm. Furthermore, the Golden Koan Sacred Lightning Body is a body-strengthening technique, and it uses up a lot of resources. The 5-elemental 10,000 lightning technique also needs resources of various elements. Zhao Feng started to think about his plan. Overall, his identity and environment were very suitable for him to recultivate. Gradually, Zhao Feng walked into the depths of the Wuxia forest. After that, the beasts he met became stronger and stronger. Beasts at the 3 heavens of the true spirit realm were very common here, and there were even true lord ranks. However, these beasts were easily taken care of by Zhao Feng and the little thieving cat before they could even get close. I still have the little thieving cat by my side. Even kings can protect themselves. But my goal is a higher level. Zhao Feng's heart calmed down. At this moment, he had a preliminary understanding of his battle prowess after his reincarnation. Firstly, although his soul intent wasn't even 1/10 of his peak, it was stronger than normal half-step kings. Secondly, the power of his god's spiritual eye still existed. The 700 to 800 wisps of god tribulation lightning in his purple soul sea were still Zhao Feng's killing moves. Protect the princess. How unlucky. I actually met the most mysterious Yinming bird in the Wuxia forest. The sound of flying came from ahead. Zhao Feng's footsteps stopped as he felt a weird aura. An enormous shadowy bird with translucent wings that were suffused with a layer of dark flames was chasing after 3 men and a woman. Whoosh! The giant shadow bird's body seemed to be illusory as it passed through some branches and leaves, its speed as fast as lightning. There were 3 men and 1 woman being chased. The 3 men were all at the primal core realm, and one of them was even a supremacy. The other young girl wore a luxurious and exquisite purple dress. She was around 14 or 15 years old, but her appearance was dignified and beautiful. Her beautiful face was like snow porcelain, and she faintly emitted a noble aura. What surprised Zhao Feng was that this girl had reached the peak true mystic rank, and was only half a step away from the true lord rank. It could be predicted that not only was this young lady extremely talented, but she was also of noble birth. What surprised Zhao Feng the most was the Yinming bird chasing them was only at the peak small origin core realm, but it was able to push back the group of 1 sovereign lord and 2 sovereigns. Puff! The Yinming bird's translucent, shadowy wings flapped rapidly, sending gusts of gloomy wind towards the 3 of them. A soul attack, and a death attribute one at that. Zhao Feng saw the clues at first glance. In other words, the Yinming bird and the Death Emperor belonged to the same system. Meow meow. The little thieving cat waved its paws as it stared at the Yinming bird. Zhao Feng felt that the Yinming bird's bloodline wasn't normal. Hoo-pa! The Yinming bird suddenly became enraged and charged toward Zhao Feng and the little thieving cat. Thieving cat, what did you say to this bird? Zhao Feng's expression changed. The Yinming bird had the battle power of a sovereign lord, and it had a unique law of death. Although that was the case, Zhao Feng didn't hesitate, and his black hair suddenly turned faint purple. Immediately after, with his back facing the 3 escaping males and 1 female, he raised his hand and locked onto the Yinming bird with his purple left eye. A weird scene appeared. The Yinming bird suddenly froze when it got close to Zhao Feng and started to struggle. The 3 escaping males and 1 female realized that the Yinming bird had suddenly left them behind and flew toward a youth. The youth's back was facing them, and he had a head of dreamy purple hair. One could faintly see the side of his handsome face. How is this possible? The leader of the sovereign lords revealed a look of surprise. Then, when the giant Yinming bird got close to Zhao Feng, its wings quickly shrank and turned into a palm-sized Yinming bird. The little Yinming bird and the little thieving cat stood on either side of Zhao Feng's shoulders and got along well with each other. The Yinming bird, which had been ferocious just a moment ago, was now obediently rubbing against Zhao Feng's neck. The Tianfeng Great Island Zone has such a powerful beast tamer. The Yinming bird is a rare species that belongs to the soul type of death. It's almost impossible to tame. The young woman in a violet dress with a dignified appearance had a face filled with surprise. What was even more unbelievable was that the beast tamer was so young. She wanted to see the side of the purple-haired youth's face, but she didn't succeed. The others were just about to go up and talk. Hoo-pa! The Yinming bird suddenly grew to a size of 200 feet. It flapped its wings and took Zhao Feng and the little thieving cat through the forest and into the clouds. Chapter 766. The 3 males and 1 female watched as Zhao Feng flew away on the Yinming bird, surprise still lingering on their faces. The Yiming bird's speed was something that the three of them couldn't catch up to. Unfortunately, I didn't get to meet such a brilliant and young beast tamer. The beautiful girl watched the Yiming bird leave with a trace of regret on her face. There weren't many people in the Tianfeng Great Island Zone who could tame the Yiming bird so easily. Furthermore, the beast tamer was such a handsome youth. Princess, don't worry. The leading Great Origin Core Realm Sovereign Lord smiled faintly. With that youth's talent, we'll have a chance to meet him in the future, as long as he's still in the Tianfeng Great Island Zone. Hearing that, everyone nodded their heads in agreement. Gold would shine sooner or later. That youth's talent would definitely spread across the Great Island Zone. At the same time, there was a mysterious guard hidden within a few dozen miles of the 3 males and 1 female. The auras of the 2 guards had reached the half-step void god realm. Weird. That youth's only at the true spirit realm, but he radiates a profound soul undulation and easily tamed the Yiming bird. One of the guards clicked his tongue in wonder. Our mission is to protect the princess in secret. That youth's weird isn't something we need to worry about. The other guard said expressionlessly. In the clouds, Zhao Feng and the little thieving cat sat on the Yiming bird and flew several thousand miles in the air above the Wuxia forest. This Yiming bird's speed isn't bad. If it weren't for the fact that I have the power of God Tribulation lightning in my soul, I wouldn't have been able to tame it so easily. Zhao Feng couldn't help but sigh. One had to know that the wind lightning inheritance that he cultivated in his previous life had the title of being the fastest emperor. One could see how fast the Yiming bird was if Zhao Feng said it was not bad. Of course, although the bird was fast, it had a weakness, and that was that it had to bear gravity. This was because only a part of the Yiming bird's body was materialized. The other part was a soul flame, so it was extremely light. It was because of this that the Yiming bird could shrink, enlarge, and even hide. For the current Zhao Feng, this bird was a good mount and also a fighter. The Yiming bird was a rare necromancy and soul-type beast. Adding on its extraordinary speed, it was no wonder Zhao Feng had risked his life to subdue it. When he'd subdued the Yinether bird, Zhao Feng had sensed the presence of 2 half-step kings in the vicinity. Therefore, he tried to restrain his aura as much as possible when he attacked. Before returning to the 10,000 Sacred Clan, I'll first complete the clan mission. Zhao Feng thought of something. This time, Zhao Feng and the other core disciples formed a team to complete a mission outside. In the mission, he needed to obtain the materials and parts of several kinds of demonic beasts within a specified time. However, these Yao beasts were all strong, and 1 or 2 normal true human ranks would find it hard to complete the mission. Half a day later, Zhao Feng easily completed the task and returned to the sect on the Yiming bird. In his field of vision, a group of lofty mountains surrounded by clouds and mist was surrounded by a layer of faint golden light, which reflected the blazing sun of the golden crow. So, in the sky above the clouds, there would be streaks of light tearing through the air. All sorts of spiritual pets and mounts were a common sight. In some areas, peak sovereign origin core realms would occasionally appear in the air above the 10,000 Sacred Clan. Zhao Feng's Yiming bird attracted the attention of some experts from the clan. The Yiming bird was a rare bird that was hard to come by even for Great Origin Core Realm sovereign lords and half-step kings. Furthermore, the Yiming bird's growth was much harder than normal beasts. Some Origin Core Realm experts in the air looked at Zhao Feng's Yiming bird with fiery gazes. However, Zhao Feng didn't move. He didn't believe that anyone would dare to steal his mount. Zhao Feng didn't plan on keeping a low profile, since he was recultivating with a new identity. If one was more high profile, they would be able to enjoy more resources and privileges in the 10,000 Sacred Clan. Within a tall hall in the 10,000 Sacred Clan, some disciples were lining up to complete their missions. Junior Martial Brother Zhao? Several surprised voices sounded from the side of the hall. The source of the voices came from Senior Martial Brother Guang, Senior Martial Sister Wan, and company. Hearing that, Zhao Feng slowly walked over. After all, this sect mission was accepted by the team together, so everyone had a share. Surprise flashed through Senior Martial Brother Guang's eyes when he saw Zhao Feng return safely. Junior Marshal Brother Zhao. Senior Marshal Brother Guang quickly hid his emotions and said, because you left the group, you didn't get a share. Under normal circumstances, as long as Zhao Feng followed the group and completed the mission, he would get a share. However, under normal circumstances, as long as Zhao Feng followed the group and completed the mission, he would get a share. However, since he left the group, the leader had the right to exclude his share. In reality, he didn't contribute much during the mission, so it wasn't unfair. I will report this to Deacon. Senior Marshal Brother Guang smiled faintly. At this moment, it was time for Senior Marshal Brother Guang's group to hand in their mission, and Zhao Feng followed them in. Within a hall, Senior Marshal Brother Guang's group started to hand in their mission. The person in charge of checking the mission was an elder at the late-stage small origin core realm. Deacon Fan, these are the materials of our group, but one of our members left the group. Senior Marshal Brother Guang said seriously. I've seen too many self-centered disciples without any sense of teamwork. This situation needs to be dealt with severely. Deacon Fan had a strict expression. Senior Marshal Brother Guang came from the lineage of a king, so Deacon Fan would obviously give him face. You're Zhao Feng? What's your share for this mission? Deacon Fan's gaze landed on Zhao Feng. Deacon Fan had an impression of Zhao Feng. He had performed quite well in the clan exam. However, just the talent of an Earth spiritual body wasn't shocking in the Lord dynasty. After all, a person's success depended on their comprehension, determination, and hard work apart from their talent. Unless their talent was like Nan Gongxing's heaven spiritual body. All in all, if Zhao Feng performed well in the next 2 years, he had a chance of becoming a king. Whoosh! Zhao Feng expressionlessly waved his hand, and a pile of beast parts appeared on the ground in front of him. What? The gazes of everyone present froze as they stared at the materials on the ground. These beast parts were all materials needed for the mission. You've completed the mission by double the quota. You did all of this by yourself? Deacon Fan was slightly dazed. In other words, Zhao Feng had completed double the quota by himself. On top of that, the materials that Zhao Feng had obtained were extremely complete and of high quality, far exceeding the requirements of the mission. Deacon Fan checked the materials and found that they were perfect. How is it possible for him to do it by himself? Senior Marshal Brother Guang and company were filled with shock and doubt. The eyes of the gentle Senior Marshal sister, Wan, spun, as she found it hard to hide her surprise. Before leaving, the mysterious aura from Zhao Feng's back appeared in her mind. Deacon Fan, did I complete my quota? Zhao Feng said with a smile that didn't look like a smile. You completed double the quota by yourself, and completed it with high quality. So of course you've met the requirements. Deacon Fan calmed down. The clan didn't have strict requirements on the method of completion. Even if you spent primal crystal stones to buy the materials needed for the mission, it was still possible. This Zhao Feng must have spent money to hire people to get the materials. After all, he has a powerful family behind him. Senior Marshal Brother Guang and the others exchanged glances. After completing the mission, everyone received their rewards. The rewards were mainly clan contribution points, which could be used to buy some cultivation techniques or enjoy some privileges. The essence of the clan's missions was that the upper echelons of the clan would let the disciples do the errands. For example, a certain upper echelon of the clan needed some low-grade materials for alchemy, but he didn't have any free time, so he gave out a mission for the disciples to complete. Or maybe, if there were any unstable factors in the clan's territory, the disciples would also be given a mission to solve them. In the world of the clan, most of the disciples at the bottom were just running errands. 2,000 points, 8,000 primal crystal stones. Zhao Feng checked his reward. His reward was more than Senior Marshal Brother Guang's and the others combined. After all, there was no limit to the number of materials needed for this mission. He walked out of the mission hall. Zhao Feng, this mission requires materials. You can buy them. Let's see how you're going to fake the next mission. Senior Marshal Brother Guang snickered in his heart. But on the surface, He and Zhao Feng still maintained a harmonious smile. Senior Marshal Brother Guang, how did you meet the people from the Yin family? Zhao Feng asked coldly. People from the Yin family? What do you mean? You're ridiculous. There was a hint of panic in Senior Marshal Brother Guang's eyes, but he forced himself to calm down. For some reason, he felt a little guilty under Zhao Feng's sharp gaze. Zhao Feng ignored him and waved his hand, and a huge illusory flame dark bird appeared in front of him. Whoosh! The Yinming bird carried Zhao Feng and flew into the sky, leaving behind a group of shocked disciples. Oh my god! It's an extremely precious Yinming bird. Isn't this bird supposed to be extremely hard to tame? An uproar broke out among the disciples. Senior Marshal Brother Guang and company had their mouths open. Could it be that the Zhao family is also helping him? Seeing the Yinming bird spread its wings and fly away with Zhao Feng, everyone was speechless for a long time. Zhao Feng soon arrived at his residence on the Yinming bird. Being a core disciple, he had his own courtyard, and it wasn't very eye-catching in the 10,000 sacred clan. Immediately, Zhao Feng opened the defensive array in his courtyard and put up a sign that he was in seclusion. The 3-star 10,000 sacred clan was indeed strong, and its basic facilities were extremely complete. Zhao Feng sat down in his room. The Golden Koan Sacred Lightning Body and the 5 Elemental Wind Lightning Technique, 2 top-tier cultivation techniques in the universe, appeared in his mind. These 2 sets of cultivation techniques are a complete set of cultivation techniques. In order to cultivate the Sacred Lightning Body, I need to use the 5 Elemental 10,000 lightning to refine my body. Zhao Feng's heart was as clear as a mirror. He needed to cultivate the 5 Elemental Wind Lightning technique first. This technique was created by merging the Wind Lightning Inheritance and the 5 Elemental 10,000 lightning technique. The 5 Elemental Wind Lightning technique is split into 12 levels, and it can be cultivated to the heavenly divine realm. The first 3 levels are the foundation of Wind Lightning and form the skeleton of Wind Lightning. From the 4th level onwards, one can cultivate the 5 Elemental Wind Lightning of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. The 10th level will allow the 5 Elemental Wind Lightning to grow endlessly. Zhao Feng's mind was immersed in it. Chapter 767. Zhao Feng glanced over and found that the first 3 levels weren't difficult for him. After all, he had cultivated the Wind Lightning Inheritance to the peak in his previous life. The 5 Elemental Wind Lightning technique used the power of wind and lightning as the foundation. Therefore, the first 3 levels were extremely important. Spending 4 hours, Zhao Feng comprehended the first 3 levels of the 5 Elemental Wind Lightning technique. He could see that the first 3 levels were the condensed version of the Purple Destruction Wind Lightning from his previous life. Not only was it condensed, but it was also strengthened and perfected. The improved 5 Elemental Wind Lightning technique is indeed profound. It's also the foundation, but it's much better than the early stages of the Wind Lightning Inheritance. Zhao Feng couldn't help but sigh. Of course, the difference in power wasn't too big since it was the early stages. The main advantage of a high-level cultivation technique was that it had greater potential. It had other advantages such as using the same amount of power, using less energy, or having an advantage in recovery and yuan qi purity. However, for Zhao Feng, who had emperor intent, what moved him the most was the potential of the inheritance. I can cultivate the first 3 levels now. Zhao Feng thought for a moment, but he didn't immediately start cultivating. He still had a few things to do before cultivating. Firstly, he took out a mouthful of the Immortal Springs wine and drank it. The Immortal Springs wine could increase one's lifespan by 1,000 years and increase one's state of existence. Most importantly, the Immortal Springs wine's effect was very gentle and merged with one's blood. Even if a mortal drank the Immortal Spring, they could slowly digest and absorb it over a long period of time. Zhao Feng obviously wouldn't let the Immortal Springs wine digest it so slowly. He immediately circulated his intent and true force, spreading the Immortal Springs wine's effect to every corner of his body. The talent of this body wasn't bad, so it could absorb the Immortal Springs wine more efficiently. 3 days later, Zhao Feng's state of existence and body had increased by leaps and bounds, creating a strong foundation. In this period of time, his body had expelled many impurities. In terms of state of existence alone, Zhao Feng's foundation surpassed the true lord rank and was close to the origin core realm. As the first realm of the true spirit realm, the true human realm, this was already an advanced foundation. Moreover, the effect of the immortal spring was only partially digested. That's right. This time, I want to strengthen my foundation even more. Zhao Feng secretly nodded. Next, only then did he officially start cultivating the 5 elemental wind lightning technique. The first 3 levels, wind and thunder foundation, were not difficult for Zhao Feng. His soul easily resonated with heaven and earth as he guided the power of wind and lightning into his body, tempering his body and merging it with his meridians. Due to his high cultivation, Zhao Feng's refinement of wind and lightning energy was extremely pure. It was predictable. Zhao Feng's cultivation of the first 3 layers of the foundation of wind and lightning was definitely ahead of others. On the material, inside Zhao Feng's ancient metal ring, there were still some rare thunder crystals left behind from his previous life, as well as a small amount of spirit materials suitable for the current stage. Only an hour had passed. A wisp of wind and lightning true force had formed in Zhao Feng's body, and its quality far surpassed the fire true force in his dantian. The original owner of this body cultivated the Tao of fire. However, due to its low level and weak foundation, it didn't affect Zhao Feng much. As time passed, wisps of wind and lightning true force merged into his dantian and cleansed the fire true force. If it was at the king realm, the true yuan dimension in his dantian would have been formed, and the scarlet gold wind lightning true yuan couldn't be cleansed like this. At that time, if he wanted to recultivate, he would have to destroy the scarlet gold wind lightning true yuan. It was like a building. The lower the level, the easier it would be to add more floors. The original owner's body was still at the foundational level, and hadn't even formed a root of law, so recultivating wasn't difficult. In just 3 days, Zhao Feng's 5 elemental wind lightning technique had reached the first level. Another half a month passed. Zhao Feng had successfully stepped into the second level. At this point in time, 99% of the fire true force within his body had been rejected. Within his source of true spirit was a clear liquid wind lightning true force that flowed endlessly throughout his body. My current cultivation is equivalent to the peak true human rank, but I don't need the root of law. Zhao Feng murmured. King intent and emperor intent were countless levels higher than the root of law. However, as his cultivation increased, Zhao Feng would polish his intent. When he recovered his cultivation base to the empty god realm, the great emperor's will would be like a furnace that had been reforged. There would be changes in its attributes, and it would undoubtedly be purer and more condensed. All in all, this recultivation would make Zhao Feng's foundation stronger and his path wider. In the blink of an eye, 2 months passed as Zhao Feng entered seclusion. At this point in time, his 5 elemental wind lightning technique had reached the peak second level, and his cultivation had reached the true mystic rank. The true spirit realm was split into 3 realms: true human rank, true mystic rank, and true lord rank. Normal geniuses needed at least 10 years to reach the true mystic rank. The true mystic rank needed to comprehend the root of law, which would make those at the true human rank be stuck for life. However, Zhao Feng only had 2 months to reach the true mystic rank. In terms of speed, it's slightly slower than the demigod Kuan Yun's blood rebirth. Zhao Feng had to admit one thing: blood rebirth could quickly create a physical body similar to when one was alive. This was especially so for the demigod Kuan Yun, who had used his blood essence to revive and continue his bloodline, and Yuan Qi from his previous life. Even a drop of blood from a demigod would be 100 times stronger than him. However, the demigod Kuan Yun's blood rebirth was still the same as before. My golden Kuan sacred lightning body and 5 elemental wind lightning technique are better than the demigod Kuan Yun's technique. Zhao Feng understood the pros and cons. It was just like how he had taken over another body and gotten rid of the cursed words of death. But he had lost the mystic ice-scaled race bloodline. After 2 months of seclusion, Zhao Feng finally exited his seclusion and stopped cultivating. If he was willing. If Zhao Feng went into seclusion for another half a year, he would at least reach the origin core realm. However, that would be too shocking. There was a bottom line even if he wanted to be high profile. There was another important reason. Zhao Feng still needed to cultivate the Golden Kuan sacred lightning body. And the difference between the two techniques couldn't be too big. However, the Golden Kuan sacred lightning body was a body strengthening technique, and it needed some body strengthening materials. Zhao Feng didn't have any of those. In reality, Zhao Feng could cultivate the 5-elemental wind lightning technique alone. That way, he would be able to advance faster. But he couldn't resist the temptation of the Golden Kuan sacred lightning body. After the sacred lightning body reached the late stages, it wouldn't be indestructible, and he would be able to revive from a single drop of blood like the demigod Kuan Yin. The biggest advantage was that the sacred lightning body had a huge advantage when dealing with the god tribulation in the future. After all, the god tribulation was the biggest threat when trying to break through to the heavenly divine realm. Once he cultivated the Golden Kuan sacred lightning body, Zhao Feng's confidence in dealing with the god tribulation lightning would increase by 50%. At that time, he might even be able to use the god tribulation to refine his body and increase his strength. Although this was all in the future, Zhao Feng couldn't help but think about the future. As soon as Zhao Feng came out of seclusion, several guests appeared outside. There were 2 origin core realms among them. Zhao Feng, I heard that you have a tamed Yiming bird. Can we trade it? One of the late-stage small origin core realms said eagerly. Sorry, I don't trade the Yiming bird. Zhao Feng shook his head and rejected. However, there were still some people who weren't willing to give up. Zhao Feng, my master is the deputy hall master of the Mystic Spell Hall, and has the potential to break through to the Void God realm. If you're willing to trade the Yiming bird, it'll be beneficial to you in the future. One of the slightly chubby youths spoke confidently with an air of seniority. Zhao Feng knew this youth. He was also a core disciple, and his name was Wang Yuan. In reality, with Zhao Feng's talent, several great origin core realm sovereign lords, and a half-step void god realm, wanted to take him as a disciple. However, Zhao Feng wanted to stand out in the clan in 2 years, and become a disciple of a king. This was also what the Zhao clan wanted. The Zhao clan also had great origin core realm sovereign lords. Only by becoming a disciple of a king would they be able to change the fate of Zhao Feng and his family. Shoo shoo shoo. Even if you're a king, I won't trade. Zhao Feng finally became impatient and waved his hand. This scene made the expressions of the chubby youth, Wang Yuan, and everyone else become ugly. A measly true spirit realm dares to act so arrogantly? One of the small origin core realm elders was enraged. Zhao Feng snickered coldly without saying anything. He waved his hand, and the void flaming Yiming bird appeared before him. The Yiming bird's aura forced the nearby people back. They watched as Zhao Feng left on the Yiming bird in a flashy manner, and they gnashed their teeth and cursed. Not long after Zhao Feng had left, Senior Marshal Brother Guang's figure appeared nearby, and he walked with the chubby youth Wang Yuan. This brat's more arrogant than I thought. Wang Yuan was slightly surprised. Zhezhe, this brat's EQ is too low. He offended so many people at once. With his personality, even if he has a mid-tier family behind him, he probably won't be able to survive for long in the 10,000 Sacred Clan. Senior Marshal Brother Guang acted as if he was watching a show. He was the one who spread the news that Zhao Feng had the Yiming bird. The Yin family had promised him that as long as Zhao Feng died, he would obtain great benefits no matter what method he used. Furthermore, Senior Marshal Brother Guang was jealous that Zhao Feng's cultivation had increased dramatically, and he even had the Yiming bird. Whoosh! The void flaming Yiming bird that was 20 yards wide landed in a trading castle within the 10,000 Sacred Clan. The territory of the 10,000 Sacred Clan was extremely big. Just the territory of the sect was equivalent to the size of the Cloud country, which was equivalent to a small country. Therefore, Zhao Feng didn't even need to leave the clan. He could take care of most of his needs in the clan. This was also why Zhao Feng chose to stay in the 10,000 Sacred Clan. He would only head to the Lord Dynasty after he fulfilled this youth's wish and broke through to the half-step Void Ocean Spiritual Palace. The castle in front of him was dozens of miles wide, and it was similar to a small Void Ocean Spiritual Palace. It was used to trade within the clan. Zhao Feng put away the Yiming bird, and the little thieving cat sat on his shoulder as its eyes spun. Half a day later, Zhao Feng traded for some body-strengthening materials. At the same time, he sold some materials that weren't useful to him in his previous life. Of course, Zhao Feng didn't sell anything that would attract the attention of those at the half-step Void God realm or higher. Zhao Feng, stop right there. A group of people stopped Zhao Feng when he walked out of the trading castle. This group was all core disciples, and the chubby youth from before, Wang Yuan, was among them. There were even 2 core disciples, which surprised Zhao Feng. Chapter 768. In the 10,000 Sacred Clan, most core disciples were disciples of kings, and their status surpassed normal core disciples. Zhao Feng obviously recognized these 2 core disciples. One of them was senior martial brother Guang, the leader of the previous mission. The other male was skinny, and his shoulders seemed to be carved out. His eyes were bright, and he gave off a sharp aura. This person's cultivation had reached the half-step origin core realm. Senior martial brother Huang Yunhu. It's this brat who's arrogant and disrespectful to kings. The slightly chubby youth Wang Yuan said. Before, Zhao Feng had said that even if a king came personally, he wouldn't trade the Yiming bird. These words were obviously embellished by Wang Yuan, saying that Zhao Feng didn't even put kings in his eyes, and so on. Huang Yunhu, core disciple of King Lu Yin. This brat loves face, and he can't accept flattery. There were memories in Zhao Feng's mind. Although this Zhao Feng had only been in the 10,000 Sacred Clan for half a year, he obviously knew about the core disciples of the famous figures. You're that Zhao Feng? Aren't you afraid that the wind will cut your tongue? How can you speculate on the opinions of kings? Huang Yunhu had an unfriendly and cold expression. It was very common for disciples to fight amongst themselves in the 10,000 Sacred Clan. The clan would close one eye as long as they didn't kill each other. After all, these fights could increase the competition between the disciples. Junior martial brother Zhao, hurry up and apologize to senior martial brother Huang and junior martial brother Wang Yuan. You know senior martial brother Huang's temper. Senior martial brother Guang pretended to appear in between Zhao Feng and Huang Yunhu. He had a concerned expression as he tried to persuade Zhao Feng not to act rashly. How about this, Junior Zhao Feng? All you need to do is kowtow and admit your crimes. I won't pursue your disrespectful words towards kings anymore. Huang Yunhu crossed his arms and said forcefully. His words were filled with righteousness, as if he was the disciple of a king realm king. Zhao Feng knew that these were all pretexts to bully the disciples. All kinds of far-fetched reasons. If it were an ordinary disciple, they might argue. But in the end, it would be useless. Naturally, Zhao Feng wouldn't be polite to these people who bullied the weak in the sect circles. Humph. 2 bottom-feeder existences among true disciples. Aren't you afraid of embarrassing your master? Zhao Feng had a look of contempt on his face. As soon as these words came out, the crowd instantly fell into a dead silence. The other core disciples broke out in cold sweat for Zhao Feng. Huang Yunhu and Lin Yun were indeed below average amongst the direct disciples. But even so, the 2 of them were among the upper echelons of the core disciples. You brat! How dare you disrespect a true disciple? Even senior martial brother Guang felt embarrassed. Huang Yunhu was infuriated. He was a true inheritor, but he was being looked down upon by a disciple who had joined the sect for half a year. Immediately, he circulated his half-step true yuan, and a thick layer of scarlet earth crystal light appeared on his body. This area seemed to be inexplicably heavy. Kneel. Huang Yunhu's half-step origin core realm aura was enough to easily deal with a true mystic rank. He was confident that he would be able to suppress this brat with just one move. However, the handsome youth in his sight smiled in disdain and gently waved his hand. Behind him, a giant dark bird spread its translucent wings and shot towards Huang Yunhu. The Yiming bird's powerful aura made the faces of Huang Yunhu and company go white, and their hearts trembled. Zhao Feng, how dare you rely on your spiritual pet in a sparring match between disciples? Senior brother Guang couldn't help but roar. Bam! Bam! Huang Yunhu was hit by a gust of wind and screamed as his body flew dozens of yards back, like a piece of paper, before landing on the ground. The remaining shockwaves caused some other core disciples to be lightly injured. One had to know. The Yiming bird was a rare soul-type beast of death, and the wind contained a soul attack that could kill life. Huang Yunhu lay on the ground with cold sweat dripping down his forehead. Is this the strength of a core disciple? Zhao Feng had a disdainful expression. Zhao Feng, you're just relying on your spiritual pet. If you have the ability, then fight me fair and square. Huang Yunhu climbed up with unwillingness and hatred on his face. Senior brother Guang said fiercely, Zhao Feng, your spiritual pet injured a core disciple. Aren't you afraid of being punished by a king? Hearing this, Zhao Feng's expression changed slightly. At that time, senior brother Guang and company would probably think of a way to punish Zhao Feng's spiritual pet. If it was a disciple injuring a disciple, it would just be a fight between juniors. However, if it was a spiritual pet injuring a disciple, the meaning was different. Is that so? Zhao Feng licked his lips as he walked in front of Huang Yunhu and stepped on his right leg. Arg! Huang Yunhu screamed miserably. There was a cracking sound as his right leg was broken. It was hard to imagine that a true mystic-ranked disciple like Zhao Feng had such a strong body. The nearby core disciples shuddered in fear. Huang Yunhu challenged me, and I broke one of his legs. Who else doesn't want to accept this? Zhao Feng's eyes scanned across the crowd. These disciples avoided Zhao Feng's gaze, their faces filled with fear as they trembled in fear. Ha ha ha. Zhao Feng raised his head and laughed as he rode the Yiming bird through the air. The core disciples had ugly expressions and were extremely unwilling. Shameless. This Zhao Feng is relying on his spiritual pet to act so arrogantly. Everyone cursed but couldn't do anything. If it wasn't for that Yiming bird, I would have been able to beat Zhao Feng. A peak true mystic rank core disciple said unwillingly. On the same day, the news of Zhao Feng injuring a core disciple with his spiritual pet spread across the disciples. On the same night, Huang Yunhu, who was injured, went to the king elder's palace and complained to his master. That Zhao Feng injuring a disciple is a small matter, but he was disrespectful to a king and humiliated master. This is unforgivable. Huang Yunhu was covered in tears and snot. He was a core disciple of a king, but he was humiliated by a youth that had just entered the clan. The hatred and humiliation in his heart couldn't be resolved. Humph, haven't you lost enough face? King Lu Yun, who was wearing snow-white robes, snickered coldly and said. King Lu Yun was one of the 17 kings of the 10,000 sacred clan. Facing his disciples begging, King Lu Yun's eyebrows furrowed. He knew that this matter had left a shadow in his disciple's heart. However, he was a king and couldn't lower his status to attack a disciple. How about this? I'll lend you a two-headed lightning bird. This bird has the cultivation of a sovereign lord and can help you suppress the Yiming bird. King Lu Yun waved his hand, and a unique token appeared in his hand. He circulated his king intent and left an imprint on the token. Thank you, master. Huang Yunhu was overjoyed. Although his master's two-headed lightning bird wasn't his main steed, it could suppress normal sovereign lords. You need to defeat that brat with your own strength. However, you can't kill him, King Lu Yun said. He was already trying to protect Huang Yunhu by lending him his steed. If Huang Yunhu accidentally killed Zhao Feng, it would be a problem. The regulations elder of the 10,000 sacred clan was an emperor-rank void god realm, and he was impartial and emotionless. Disciple understands. I'll cripple him, but I'll spare his life. Huang Yunhu was overjoyed. He ate the spiritual pill that his master had given him, and his broken leg quickly healed with the help of his magnificent power. The next day, Huang Yunhu's injuries had mostly healed, and he immediately went to find Zhao Feng. However, a defensive array was activated in Zhao Feng's courtyard, and a sign that he was in seclusion was put up. Cunning brat! He's hiding! Huang Yunhu exploded in anger. That Zhao Feng is indeed shameless. He went into seclusion early. Some of the disciples that were watching felt bored. The 10,000 Sacred Clan had a rule that unless there was a special situation, a core disciple in seclusion wasn't to be disturbed. Senior Martial Brother Huang, don't worry. Senior Martial Brother Guang came out from the crowd and smiled. Junior Martial Brother Guang, what do you think? Huang Yunhu glanced over. Guang Tian was also a king's disciple, but he was only an in-name disciple, and he barely had the status of a core disciple. According to the rules, a core disciple has to complete a mission every month, and it can't be more than 3 months late. That Zhao Feng hasn't completed a mission for 2 months already. Guang Tian had a smile. Hearing this, the disciples came to a realization. So that's how it is. If it's more than 3 months, he'll be warned by the clan, and if it's more than half a year, he'll be punished. These disciples were very familiar with the rules of the clan. Ha ha ha. Brat Zhao Feng, I'll make you hide for a month. Huang Yunhu laughed loudly. In another month, the clan would send someone to warn Zhao Feng. This meant that Zhao Feng would only be able to enter seclusion for a month, at most, before he was interrupted. Everyone disperse. The Divine Illusion Dimension will open in half a year's time. If we can enter the Divine Illusion Dimension and obtain treasures from the ancient era, it'll be a great boost to our cultivation. The group of core disciples dispersed. They agreed to come back and punish Zhao Feng in a month's time. Within a room in the courtyard. At this moment, Zhao Feng was soaking in a layer of medicinal liquid, and wisps of wind lightning started to appear on his body as it refined his body. The Golden Kuan Sacred Lightning Body is split into 8 levels. At the 7th level, one can form the Demigod Lightning Body, which increases one's resistance to the 5 elements and God Tribulation Lightning. Before the 7th level, each level corresponds to a major realm. Zhao Feng was cultivating the 1st level of the Sacred Lightning Body. The original version of the Golden Kuan Sacred Body had extremely strict cultivation requirements. However, the improved Golden Kuan Sacred Lightning Body could use the power of 10,000 lightning to refine one's body. If one cultivated the 5-elemental 10,000 lightning technique, or the 5-elemental wind lightning technique, the requirements would be lowered, and they could be used together. Zhao Feng had already cultivated the 5-elemental wind lightning technique to the 3rd level. Now he could use the power of wind lightning to refine his body, and body-strengthening materials could greatly increase the efficiency. Comparatively speaking, the advancement of body-tempering cultivation techniques was much slower than ordinary cultivation techniques. However, Zhao Feng had consumed the Immortal Springs wine earlier, and his body and state of existence had changed. Now, with the help of the wind lightning technique at the 3rd level, and some high-quality body-strengthening materials, the effect was extremely good. 3 days later, Zhao Feng's Golden Kuan Sacred Lightning Body had reached the peak of the 1st level. Half a month later, his Sacred Lightning Body had reached the late stages of the 2nd level. At this moment, a faint layer of metallic lines appeared on Zhao Feng's skin, which was similar to the faint green color of his wind lightning true force. An invisible physical pressure radiated from Zhao Feng's body. Crack! A nearby chair was smashed into smithereens by the formless power of his physical body. Soon a month had passed. Zhao Feng's Sacred Lightning Body had reached the peak of the 2nd level, and the muscles and bones in his body contained a dominating power that could crush anything. Physical strength was just one aspect. The Sacred Lightning Body also gave Zhao Feng the ability to absorb the power of lightning and become immune to a certain amount of elemental attacks. Chapter 769. The first 3 levels of the Golden Kuan Sacred Lightning Body corresponded to the realms before the Origin Core Realm. Zhao Feng had only cultivated to the peak second level, but his body alone was comparable to the true mystic rank. If he broke through to the third level, he would be able to kill true lord ranks with his body alone. The first 3 levels were just the foundation of the sacred lightning body. My state of existence and body aren't strong enough yet, or else I could return to the ancient dream realm and obtain some resources. A plan appeared in Zhao Feng's mind. However, the amount of resources needed for body strengthening exceeded Zhao Feng's expectations. The amount of resources needed to cultivate both the Golden Kuan sacred lightning body and the 5 elemental wind lightning technique at the same time wasn't small. Zhao Feng calculated, if he didn't enter the ancient dream realm soon, he might face a shortage of resources when he reached the Great Origin Core realm. Apart from that, he also needed some rare Tao of the Soul treasures to recover. Only when his soul reached the Void God realm would Zhao Feng's emperor intent be able to fully awaken and return to its peak. Right now, Zhao Feng didn't have many Tao of the Soul resources. Zhao Feng's eyebrows furrowed as he started to plan. Only now did he understand why the child demigod needed resources so much. Of course, if he cultivated honestly and didn't use any resources, he would be able to return to his peak within a dozen or so years. However, Zhao Feng didn't want to wait that long. I need to return to the Void God realm within 3 years. Zhao Feng's eyes twinkled. A while later, in Zhao Feng's heart he had a few ways to make money. First, taming spiritual beasts. If he could tame a few more beasts like the Yiming bird, he would be able to make a lot of money. Second, adventuring. He could go to some dangerous ruins or secret realms and dig up some ancient treasures. Third, clan missions. Completing some difficult sect missions would reward them handsomely. The contribution points obtained from the missions could also be exchanged for some precious resources. Relatively speaking, the first and third were safer, and the rewards were more stable. The second option, exploration and adventure, was a little dangerous. Just as Zhao Feng was thinking, Zhao Feng. A thunderous voice came from outside the courtyard. That voice even penetrated the defensive formation. Zhao Feng walked out of the house and saw a purple-robed law enforcer floating outside the courtyard. His cultivation had reached the Great Origin Core realm. Law enforcer, what can I do for you? Zhao Feng's expression changed slightly. Under normal circumstances, as long as one didn't violate the sect's rules, the law enforcers wouldn't come to question them. From the corner of his eye, he could see the gloating expressions of some of the core disciples near the courtyard. In the crowd, Huang Yunhu, Wang Yuan, and senior brother Guang Tian were all present. Zhao Feng, you haven't completed any sect missions in 3 months. I, the enforcer, have come to give you a warning. I will also suspend your supply of core disciple resources for the next 3 months. The purple-robed law enforcer looked down at Zhao Feng indifferently. Deducting 3 months' worth of resources in one go was not a small matter for ordinary sect disciples. In a competitive sect, without resources, one would fall behind others. If you don't complete the mission in half a year, you will be punished by the sect. The purple-robed law enforcer then left. The purple-robed law enforcer left after saying that. Zhao Feng was stunned. He had been cultivating the Golden Kuan sacred lightning body and the 5 elemental wind lightning technique for the past 3 months. So he had forgotten about this. I'll finish all the missions for the next year and get some resources. Zhao Feng made a decision. He felt pain to have 3 months' worth of resources deducted from a core disciple's salary. No matter how small a fly's leg was, it was still meat, especially to Zhao Feng who had just recultivated. Shua. After deactivating the defensive array, Zhao Feng came out of seclusion and prepared to go on missions. At the same time, he would go to some places in the wilderness to tame some spiritual beasts. Zhao Feng, I've been waiting for you. A lean and sharp-looking man leaped forward to block Zhao Feng. It was Huang Yunhu. He had waited an entire month for today. Now that he had borrowed a flying spiritual beast from King Lu Yun, he could counter Zhao Feng's Yiming bird. Loser. Zhao Feng glanced at him with disdain. Hearing this, the crowd broke out into chaos. Huang Yunhu almost went crazy from anger. He had been looked down upon by this true mystic rank brat. Zhao Feng, you still have the nerve to say that when you used your spiritual beast last time. This brat doesn't know shame. The nearby central disciples all felt embarrassed for Zhao Feng and laughed. The central disciples all knew that Huang Yunhu had something to rely on this time. Zhao Feng, don't fight. Huang Yunhu borrowed his master King Lu Yun's twin-legged thunderbird this time, said a gentle and concerned female voice. The lightning bird has the cultivation of a great origin core realm sovereign lord. Senior Martial Sister Wan? Zhao Feng glanced over and saw Senior Martial Sister Wan Rong rushing over. Her gentle aura immediately attracted the gazes of the nearby male disciples. Senior Martial Sister Wan, don't worry. He's just a loser. Zhao Feng smiled. He had a good impression of Senior Martial Sister Wan. After all, she had healed him when he had just taken over this body. Brat, don't be arrogant. Huang Yunhu was enraged. How could he tolerate being looked down upon by a true mystic rank youth? After speaking, a token appeared in his hand, and a wisp of king intent appeared on it. In the next instant, crackle, a large two-legged lightning bird appeared in a flash of lightning. It was even slightly bigger than Zhao Feng's Yiming bird. King intent, Zhao Feng murmured. It wasn't hard for him to see that Huang Yunhu could control the two-legged lightning bird for a short amount of time. Otherwise, even though Huang Yunhu was at the half-step origin core realm, he wouldn't even be able to get past the sovereign lord rank two-legged lightning bird. Who? Zhao Feng didn't hesitate. He waved his hand, and a giant flaming bird charged into the sky. So, Huang Yunhu and Zhao Feng arrived in the air above a piece of ruins. The clash of two origin core realm birds attracted the attention of many members of the 10,000 Sacred Clan. Boom, boom. The two-legged lightning bird and the Yiming bird started to fight in the air. Huang Yunhu and Zhao Feng immediately pulled apart. In terms of cultivation, there was a huge difference between them and the two birds. For example, Zhao Feng, apart from his soul intent and eye bloodline, he probably wouldn't even be able to dodge the two-legged lightning bird and the Yiming bird. Ha ha ha. Brat, you won't be able to escape this time. Huang Yunhu laughed as he circulated his half-step True Yuan and turned into a pillar of scarlet earth crystal that shot toward Zhao Feng. As expected of a core disciple, the powerful aura of a half-step primal core realm made the nearby spectating core disciples tremble. Wang Yuan and Senior Martial Brother Guang had bright smiles on their faces. The difference between the true mystic rank and the half-step origin core realm wasn't small. If Zhao Feng was at the true lord rank, he might be able to block it. However, a true mystic rank would be instantly killed by a half-step origin core realm. Shua, Huang Yunhu charged toward Zhao Feng with a heavy force. A normal true mystic rank wouldn't even be able to fight back. Huang Yunhu, stop. Senior Martial Sister Wan Rong not far away couldn't bear to watch. However, Zhao Feng had an expressionless expression as he floated in the air. Shua, a pair of smooth wings of wind and lightning extended from Zhao Feng's back, as if they were alive. An arc of wind and lightning flashed. Boom! Huang Yunhu's ferocious charge missed. He nearly lost his balance on the spot. What? Huang Yunhu only felt his vision blur as he hit a blur. In the next instant, he felt the roar of lightning, and a coldness spread down his back. A figure with wings of lightning flashed behind him. Wind lightning hand blade. Zhao Feng's right hand was in the shape of a blade, and a layer of wind lightning appeared on his metallic palm. Crack! The wind lightning blade light, pushed by a powerful physical force, cut through Huang Yunhu's half-step quintessential essence layer. Arg! Huang Yunhu screamed as blood splattered from his back. His body was sent flying dozens of yards away by the wind lightning hand blade and smashed into a ruined building. That slash had injured him quite a bit. The spectators nearby broke out into discussion. What speed? That wings of wind and lightning seems to be a secret skill of our sect's wind lightning technique. Only a small number of people saw the difference in the clash. Firstly, Huang Yunhu had underestimated his opponent first. Secondly, Zhao Feng's shocking speed and the skills of the flying master allowed him to instantly appear behind the target and slash out. What was even more incredible was that the power of Zhao Feng's slash and his powerful body caught Huang Yunhu off guard. That slash contained the power of the 5-elemental wind lightning technique and the golden coin sacred lightning body. I underestimated my opponent. Huang Yunhu clenched his teeth and barely managed to get up. In the air, the youth with wings on his back was extremely handsome, like an angel of battle. Zhao Feng, is this your power? Wan Rong's eyes twinkled with shock and doubt. She had a certain level of understanding towards this youth, who had just entered the clan. How did Zhao Feng change so much in just 2 to 3 months? Wind lightning exploding fist. Zhao Feng's fist expanded, and it seemed to have a metallic feel to it, as it created a dazzling explosion of wind and lightning. Limitless earth. Huang Yunhu's body was covered in a crimson light, and he was like a burning mountain that shook the air. Boom! 2 figures clashed in the air, creating a thunderous sound. Whoosh! Whoosh! One of the figures with lightning wings used the force to retreat. Wah! The other figure covered in scarlet light spat out a mouthful of blood, as he was pushed back by the powerful shockwaves. Huang Yunhu, you've lost again. The wings of wind and lightning on Zhao Feng's back quickly retracted. He had relied on his powerful defense and reaction speed to not be injured in the clash just now. Huang Yunhu's face was pale, and he had lost most of his battle power. It's all because I underestimated my opponent at the start, and was heavily injured. Otherwise, the odds of winning would have been 50-50. Huang Yunhu's face was filled with humiliation, and his fists trembled. That was especially so when Zhao Feng said that he had lost again. It almost made him go crazy, but there was nothing he could do. The spectators nearby were dumbfounded as they witnessed this unexpected turn of events. However, they didn't know that this was only the beginning of a miracle. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.